Welcome to this meeting of Salisbury City Council's Full Council on this day, the 24th of June 2024. We have a fairly packed agenda tonight, so we're going to crack on with this. So if we can keep our comments as we go through the meeting pertinent and to the point, that would be much appreciated. I'm sure I, like all the rest of us, would prefer not to be here at midnight. Okay, cracking on. Apologies. Do I have any apologies?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been made aware of Councillors Sample and Blackwood.
Thank you very much. Public questions and statements. I understand we have a couple of statements from a Mr. Paul Smith, who would like to come front and centre, please. So I haven't actually received the statements you're about to make, but I would be grateful if you could keep them to about 3 minutes combined, please. Thank you.
No problem.
The floor is yours.
Okay, so this is to the Mayor and Deputy Mayor. I wish to ask, is it true a text was written back in November to a closed WhatsApp group of 16, which both of you were part of? My question is, if the message was offensive or goes against your morals, did any of you at the time condemn the contents of the text? And if not, why not? If it wasn't a political point scoring, why did you wait 4 months to put up a statement for the current mayor to be removed? According to morals, a mayor should have high standards, so as you didn't condemn at the time, doesn't that equally make you guilty? So my question is, should you be wearing the chain with pride now? And that's my first question. The next one, I was recently verbally bullied and abused by a councillor in a Facebook group with 4,000 local members. And via a recent independent inquiry held by Wiltshire Council, it was upheld that he broke 2 Salisbury City Council and Wiltshire Council codes of conduct, yet he continues to be able to represent the electorate of both councils. I ask, is this the sort of councillor that you wish to work alongside, bearing in mind it was published via the Salisbury Journal for all in the locality to see the type of language he used to myself and members of the public? It seems with the action taken against the previous mayor, to suspend him for what was in effect a comment made in a private text. And yet what this councillor did to me and others, he bullied and abused in a more public way. He remains in office using disgraceful language for everyone to see. It appears to me the actions of the council are inconsistent. How can you expect to gain any respect from your electorate for allowing a councillor to represent members of the local electorate after he was found to have broken both councils' codes of conduct with very little action taken? Since the announcement of the public inquiry, this particular councillor is obviously embarrassed at the situation, as he has either removed his official Facebook page or made it private so it can't be seen by all those he represents. And I further question how long it took Wiltshire Council to get to its conclusion, which was 6 months, which must have cost the taxpayer a lot of money. Can this not be speeded up, as it was very evident right from the start that 2 codes of conduct were broken? And that's the end of my questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. I'll pass over to the CEO to make comment on that, if I may. Thank you.
Firstly, Mr. Smith, thank you for taking the time to come in this evening and to be a part of our democratic process. So thank you very much for coming. In terms of answering the first question, you may be aware that this is subject to an ongoing investigation. Unfortunately, this investigation seems to have taken a considerable amount of time, and we at Salisbury City Council aren't leading that. That is being conducted by Wiltshire Council. And although we've made representations about the length of time it is taking, it is not within our control to speed up that process as much as I think a number of colleagues in this chamber may want closure on that. In terms of the second statement, the behaviour of councillors is of utmost importance, particularly given the Nolan principles in public office. But you may not be aware that this council does not have the ability to suspend, censure, fire, remove any of those things. Again, we are beholden to our colleagues at Wiltshire Council who act on our behalf. And again, the length of time and the outcomes to those investigations, we are not privy to. We are able to submit and supply information if requested, but those decisions are taken by people outside of this administration. So that is a response for you, sir.
Okay. Yep. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Much appreciated. Thank you for coming. Item 3, councillor questions or statements. Item 3, councillors. Not at the moment, Haskell. I prefer not, please. Councillor questions and statements. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, although Councillor Rimmer's question has been moved to item 17 on the agenda and he's agreed to that. So we have 3 others. The first 2 statements are from Councillor Tom Corbyn. Tom, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. So first statement. It is incumbent on us to challenge hatred and to understand that as councillors, we can help commit to ensuring our communities are safe and happy places to live and grow up in. Councillors might like to refer to the national campaign group Hope Not Hate, or hopenothate.org.uk, which provide useful tools and training.
Thank you, Councillor Corbyn. There you are, councillors. If you'd like to have a look at that, I'm sure Tom will be much appreciative. Tom, second statement, please.
Thank you, Chair. On the 11th of May, councillors of all parties voted in the new Mayor of Salisbury, Conservative councillor Sven Hocking. At the same meeting, those same councillors present also voted in a Conservative Deputy Mayor, Councillor Ed Rimmer. The convention to which this council elects members to the prestigious and honorary roles of Mayor and Deputy Mayor should be well understood and respected by all members. At the previous full council meeting of the 4th of March, Councillor Rimmer asked a question of the administration as to why the administration had not removed the then Mayor of Salisbury from his role. Following the response given by Administration Group Leader Councillor Ian Tomes, Councillor Rimmer verbally retorted that Councillor Hock should be removed from his role as a councillor, which I am sure Councillor Rimmer was aware that this is not an option open to elected members. Given the nature of the timing during this general election and Salisbury Council by-election period of purdah, members might have assumed a sense of duty from the incumbent Deputy Mayor to give due sensitivity to the impact of changing political party within days of being elected into the role of Deputy Mayor. In the days prior to taking over the reins of Reform Party UK, I heard the leader, Nigel Farage, reeling off some rather depressing and hurtful dialogue on live morning TV news. This is the party that Councillor Rimmer now stands for. There is a rudeness of presumption that fellow council members would continue to support sticking with convention when political views are at such odds to those we knew on the 11th of May. I believe that the Deputy Mayor in his March the 4th comments was challenging appropriate behaviours, and the Deputy Mayor is also presumably beholden to the same values. Is he?
Thank you, Councillor Corbyn. So is that a statement or a question?
That ends as a question.
Councillor Rimmer.
I'm not really sure it's due a response. That doesn't really make any sense. But if we were to respond to it, I'd need to know what we're talking about. Just sort of an assertion that you don't like something that's said by the leader of the party that I now stand for is fine. You're welcome to like what a politician says, what anyone doesn't. That's fine. Am I beholden to the same values? Yes, I am. If you want to give any specific things, that's fine. But I think setting a sort of, well, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Any follow-up with that? I think we'll leave you two to take that outside. Okay, third question for this evening is from Councillor Ricky Rogers.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is, since the 1st of April 2023, which streets, roads have had hand weeding works carried out to footpaths and road curb lines in Fisherton and Bemerton Village Ward?
To the Chief Exec for a response.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Councillor, I will ensure that a written response is provided to you within 10 days by our Head of Environmental Services as per our standing orders.
Okay, excellent. Okay, moving on. Minutes of the previous meeting. Are you happy that I approve as a correct record and sign the minutes of the last meeting of full council heard on the 4th of March 2024? All those say aye. Duly signed. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Do I have any? There are no declarations of interest. No declarations of interest. Dispensations. Do I have any from the floor? No. Okay, I'm going to make one. Given this is a relatively long agenda, we may have to go past the 9:30 mark. I intend not to, but we might. So I'm asking for a dispensation to go past that 3-hour limit should it be necessary. All those in favour? We have our 9:30 finish time. Sorry, Victoria.
Sorry, Chair, I will need to excuse at least one of us. We only have childcare until 9:30.
Got 11. Of course, no problem at all. Right, Chairman's announcements. So, as you know, I'm now the Mayor, remarkably. People sort of bandy the words honour and privilege around like it's a bit of confetti if you hear it on the TV and on the news. But actually, for me, it absolutely is being a Salisbury boy. So, to be elected as Mayor of the city on the 11th of May was a fantastic day. I really enjoyed it. I hope all you attended did, and it means so much to me. It really does. Since that day, I've attended some 29 engagements to include mayor making and church events in Bath, Malmesbury and Devizes. So it's good to fly the flag for Salisbury and our other county and local towns. I visited a number of care homes and daycare centres, welcomed some 50 new citizens to the UK at the Register Office at Bourne-Hill, helped out with prize giving at the dog show on the square, sat in plenty of very un-eco-friendly vehicles at the car show the weekend before last, attended the 40th birthday of the Salisbury Women's Refuge, attended the High Sheriff's garden party at Horatio's garden up at the hospital, opened the Salisbury Art Trail and hosted a dinner here at the Guildhall for the Twinning Association of Xanten, attended by some 100 guests, 50 of whom actually came over from the city of Xanten in Germany. But the most poignant of all those events were the 80th D-Day anniversary remembrance services on the 6th of June. So among many of the forces veterans I met during the course of the day, one chap was 99, one was 101, and one was 102 and a half, as he quite liked to get over. And they all had some stories to tell. The one thing that struck me, however, was that these gents, they remember everything that happened like it was yesterday. They say time heals and memory fades with time. And they hide this stuff, they package it up in a box and put it right back here somewhere and bury it for as long as they can. But on occasions like the 6th and remembrance, it comes back again. And they see what they saw as clear as the day that it actually happened. So for me, they were some really remarkable people. And I think this is why the mayoralty and the civic events that we do, both here in our city and the other cities that we visit when they do their events, is so important. As the saying goes, to know where you're going, you need to remember from where you have come. Really important stuff. That's my bits recently. Moving on, administration leaders' announcements. I believe Councillor Riddles is going to speak on behalf of everybody this evening. Is that right?
I am, and I hope I won't go on for too long because we have got a busy evening. Okay, so the last few months have been a time of change within the council, of refocusing our efforts and doubling down on getting the basics right. We are very pleased with our new Chief Exec, Asa Thorpe, and our Finance Officer, Steve Bishop, who have quickly got to grips with challenges that have arisen following an extended period when we were lacking continuity in senior management roles. We are very grateful to all our officers for their efforts to maintain services during this period of instability. We now have a new communications officer, Charlotte Erdley, in place, focusing on our administration's aim to improve the council's engagement with the public. And in August, we will be joined by a new head of business, Matt Hine. Matt has had a 25-year career in the NHS, most recently heading up commercial relations with the private and independent sectors. A priority for the administration and the senior management team going forward is a complete update of our asset register. We've now sold 47 Blue Ball Row. This rundown building, part of which used to be Lloyd's Chemist, had long been a drain on our resources, and we look forward to seeing its redevelopment and the improvement that this will make to the look of our city centre. Just a word of warning, as a council, we will be moving into a new audit regime for the next financial year, which will cost us and hence our taxpayers an extra £60,000 a year. We have no choice about this. It's a legal necessity because of the size of our budget. We are one of the first parishes, if not the first, to find ourselves in this situation, and it will have an impact on what we can do as a council. We'll be kicking off the budget consultation process with the public very soon, and I would urge everybody to get involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Riddle. Any questions for Councillor Riddle whilst we're here? No, fantastic stuff. Agenda item 9, referral of minutes. So, to note the minutes of the committees below on the papers you will have received: Environment and Climate, 11th of March, Planning and Development, 25th of March, Community Services, 8th of April, Annual Parish Meeting, 29th of April, Planning and Development, 22nd April, Personnel, 24th of April, Annual Parish Meeting, 29th of April, Events, Markets and Grants, 13th of May, Planning and Development, 20th of May, Community Service, 10th of June, Planning and Development, 17th of June. My intention is to move these from the chair and take them on block unless there are any questions. Tom.
Can you take the Planning and Development 17th of June off, as those minutes haven't been circulated yet?
Done. So I shall move all the other ones on block from the chair. If we're all happy, please say aye. Thank you very much. Okay, committee reports. So we have events.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we had a very lively meeting of the Events, Markets and Grants Subcommittee. We awarded grants to several organisations, including one that I'm particularly excited about, which is the Community Circus. Yeah, that's pretty much all of it. It was a very good meeting. I think we have committed, I think, 45% of our available funds for the year already, which is, of course, the perennial problem with the grants subcommittee. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Environmental Services, or Environment and Climate, rather, John.
Thank you, Chair. I won't be providing an update this evening, given that I haven't spoken to Mark Reed recently, and we have an Environmental Services Committee next week where there'll be quite a considerable update on the progress over the year so far.
Thank you, John. F&G, Finance.
Thank you, Chair. No update from F&G, as there have been no meetings during this period.
Planning. Tom.
So we are the busiest committee of this council, and every member is welcome to attend. Every 4 weeks we meet, and for everybody who is on that committee, congratulations on being such hard workers, because I do appreciate the amount of effort and energy you put into it. And anyone else who wishes to come along and take, you are most welcome. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tom. Excellent. I'll echo that. Actually, everybody in that committee does work quite hard, including our chair. I have to say, he goes through everything, which is probably why the meeting takes so damn long. But can't fault Tom for his lack of effort. Thank you very much, Tom. Excellent stuff. Communities.
Hi, that's me. For all the members of the public that are here today, I'd like to point out that the Communities Services Committee is a pleasure to chair, and our team is absolutely amazing. But you'd only know that if you actually came to those meetings, and I wish you did. I cannot thank Sarah and the team enough. The stuff with the pantry, all of the community work that goes on with the fun days and everything else, it is second to none. In fact, other councils could learn a lot from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Personnel. And Councillor Riddle, anything on neighbourhood planning that you'd like to update us on?
We have now had an inspector appointed to look into our plan, and we've had some further feedback from Wiltshire Council, which is a statutory process. They seem to have raised things which they could have raised earlier but didn't. We will be having I will be having a meeting shortly with our planning advisor, and we'll update you at the next meeting. I think that's the best thing.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Riddle. Item 11, outside representatives. Do we have anybody from any outside representatives that would like to give a report? No. This is going swimmingly this evening. Okay, item 12, members' annual reports. Tom, this is you, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to bring to the committee the members' annual reports for 2023, 2024. This includes the members' committee attendance report and then the members' basic parish and travelling and substance allowance report. I'd just like to note one correction on the committee attendance report. The copy you've seen states that the events, markets and grants had 5 meetings in the last mayoral term. It actually only had 4, so that will be amended. Thank you.
Okay, before we go through this, ladies and gentlemen, this isn't going to be, I was there for 3 of those and not 2, or I was 4 of these and not 5. This is something that as members you should have sorted out before we got to this committee. So we either take the report as is and approve it, or if you want to go away and argue about how many times you were at whatever meeting, then I'm going to defer the report and we're going to pick it up at the next meeting. So are we in favour of this report, or do we have any changes? Councillor McGrath.
Thank you. Just a quick one from me. I want this report deferred because on the travel and subsistence document, it says that I've claimed 100% of my allowance this year. I've not claimed my city council allowance since March 23. So I want this deferred.
Councillor Hott.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to clarify also, is it possible to ask, because I was off since February, so the last 4 months, I will wish to return the money that I received to the council. Is that possible?
Fine.
Just going to say, Councillor Lynn Blackwood has had a number of health issues recently.
Yeah, I'm going to defer these reports both until the next meeting till we've got this stuff sorted out. Sam, last go.
Sorry, I want to just clarify what Councillor McGrath just said. The report I'm looking at says he has claimed 0%. I'm not sure if there are 2 different versions of this report.
Again, I said this isn't up for debate. This are up for, if we're not happy, then I'll defer them and we can get happy about them in the next meeting and then we'll sign them off. So, okay, both those reports are deferred. Item 13, order of precedence. Tom?
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to note the order of precedence for 24-25, which notes Sven Hockin as the Mayor of the City and Councillor Ed Rimmer as the Deputy Mayor.
Comments and questions, any, or are we happy with that? Okay, move that from the chair. Are we all happy? All right. Approve committee membership.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just bringing up the appropriate document here. From memory, I believe there is just one slight amendment Councillor Tomes confirms that in terms of events, markets and grants subcommittee, it should be Councillor C. Corbyn rather than Councillor T. Corbyn. This report is for agreement. Could I say thank you to those leaders and members who have come back and confirmed their attendance revisions due to the changes in political makeup of this council.
Fantastic, thank you. So those amendments noted, are we all happy? Move from the chair, we are? Okay. Done. Okay, I'm going to wiggle the agenda order around a little bit now, and I'm going to take item 25 next, which is the markets update, if Luke is here. Purely because then we don't have Luke sat around for the next hour and a half waiting to get to his allotted time. So Luke, over to you. Yeah.
Evening, everybody. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and speak to you about our market. Press the button. We want it on like that? Okay. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come speak to you about our amazing market. As I'm sure you're all aware, this has been quite a busy time for us over the past few weeks with a new layout and sort of reintegration of the Guildhall side of the market into the main market square. So we originally started thinking about a plan and a new layout at the end of last year when Joanna Wood was still here. I came up with a first draft idea for the plan, which didn't go down particularly well with any of the market traders. So we kind of abandoned that idea and came up with something else, which I felt the safest, the easiest, and the option that would cause the least amount of disruption was to move people from the Guildhall Square back onto the main market square, which is the way things were prior to COVID. So a few weeks of planning, probably a few months of planning later, and the first market where that layout came into effect took place on Tuesday of last week, which did go down rather well. I was really quite surprised at the positive reaction that we had from the market traders and the public. They were all really quite positive. And we even got I don't know if you saw it, a positive write-up in the Salisbury Journal after they went around and interviewed some of the market traders, which was really nice to see. Saturday just gone. Again, we did our first Saturday market with that new layout, which is slightly more of a challenge just because we had more traders on a Saturday. But again, it all went fine. They all were really, really pleased with how it went and really cooperative. So it was definitely the right thing to do and something that we'll continue with moving forward. A few other things. We are, as kind of part of that, we spoke, Asa and I, about upgrading the power in the market square. Currently, most of the outputs that we have only have 16 amps of power, which is not enough for the majority of traders these days. They require 32 amps of power. So we have agreed to undertake that work with DNN to get all of the power points out there upgraded to contain 32 amps, which is going to be a really positive thing for the market traders and will future-proof our market square moving forward. You may or may not know that a few weeks ago we had one of our market vans stolen from the Bemerton Heath Centre, so that was a bit of a kerfuffle. We managed to get it back the same day, but we didn't get the keys back. So we've been through a couple of weeks of backwards and forwards with the recovery company and the police trying to get all that sorted. We have now. I managed to get the van back on Friday this week, so that's all back to how it should be. Again, you may have seen as you've walked through the market, we have some traders trading outside of Alum and Sidaway during the week now. Something that I've been quite keen to do ever since I've been the market officer here and not really sure why we haven't ever done it. We're not in breach of the charter if we have less than 5 traders because it's not classed as a rival market. So we're well within our rights to do it. Again, that's gone down really well with the public. And, you know, I've forecasted if we carry on with the amount of traders that we have, it'll generate us around another £18,000 a year in market rent. So it's something that's definitely worth doing. In the same vein, future ideas, I'd really like to run an evening summer street food market, maybe on a Thursday evening. I think that'd be really quite nice and something else that, you know, we could get the pubs and the restaurants in the square involved in as well. And obviously with our new business manager, Matt, due to start in August, there'll be plenty of other things that he and I will discuss to hopefully, you know, liven up the market square a little bit and bring in some more income for the council. Thank you ever so much for listening to me.
Thank you, Luke.
Thank you.
All sounds quite positive. Hang on a second. Someone's back to ask me a few questions. I have to say I've spent 1, 2, 3 Saturdays and Tuesdays just having a walk around chatting to the traders, and they were all largely quite looking forward to the move. I didn't hear anybody that was going, "Oh my God, this is terrible."
Yeah.
It sounded like pre the move, it was going to work. But Ian, obviously as a market trader, you're bound to have something to say about this.
I am not a market trader, but I did enjoy 39 years on the market. And I'd just like to thank Luke, firstly, for his presentation tonight, which I thought was brilliant. And secondly, for all the work he's done. He's very much appreciated by my colleagues on the market still. They're quite quick to let you know their views, and I've only heard praise for you. So well done.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you, Ian. Well done, Luke. Caroline.
Yeah, I can only thank you. I mean, we've had lots of conversations over the time since you've been here, really, about the change and how some traders wouldn't like it. But I think it's only positive, and the only way is up. And if it, by moving it over, it means we can make revenue from the Guildhall Square to coincide with that, then that's got to be a plus for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Jeremy.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. Likewise. And certainly I've spoken to a number of traders, and they've all said, especially the ones on Blue Ball Road, and I know this happened before 2 weeks ago, that they're now facing into the market. And that's far better for them and their customers, so they're very pleased with that. I just have 2 questions, or 1 question and 1 comment, actually, other comment. And that is, what time are the market traders legally allowed to leave the market square? And I say that for safety reasons.
It varies as to the time of year. In the winter, so when the clocks change for the winter, it's 3:30. And at the moment in summer, it's 4 o'clock.
Thank you very much. And your suggestion of a food market, you only have to come out of Waterloo Station and go up to the Festival Hall to realise how amazing that is and the response. And I wonder, you know, it's debatable, you need to take soundings on this, but they run that on a Friday as opposed to a Thursday. And I know I can see there could be issues with market traders wanting to set up the next day, but that seemed to be quite an interesting observation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say a huge thank you to you, Luke, for your hard work on this. I'm really looking forward to the evening street food with music, of course.
Absolutely.
Right.
Chair, thank you. And thanks for the presentation, Luke, and pleasure to meet you as well. Look forward to the evening food do's. I think perhaps the council should have a real ale tent to it as well. So I think that'd go in quite well. Good festival here over the weekend. My question is sort of aligned to this, but not specifically on the market itself. But we do have the traders' cafes and that around the market square that obviously put the seating out, which I assume doesn't interfere with the market. But there is a vendor out there at the moment that seems to have almost taken the slot right up to the toilets, not quite that far, but a lot further than anybody else. And I just wonder that they are paying for that space. And I fully encourage the cafe culture. It's a great idea.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. I think Jason would like to step in at that point. At this point.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Enforcement is something that we are working with our partners to ensure that all traders are playing by the rules, that they are paying the dues that they owe to us as a council. We're also taking this as an opportunity to reframe some of the discussions and the relationships that we have with some of those businesses and traders. We want to do everything that we can to support a vibrant business in our city. We also want to make sure that everybody has a level playing field. The piece of work that a number of officers are undertaking at the moment is to make sure that those rules are refreshed, up to date, and that all businesses are aware of them. What we have done, first of all, is worked with our partners at Wiltshire Council to make sure that any planning issues that might be happening on that square are dealt with accordingly. We now move into our second phase work, which is around making sure that, for example, where there are issues of seating, that we can resolve those appropriately without damaging relationships with businesses or all businesses on that market square.
Okay, excellent stuff. Luke, thank you very much. Sounds like if you've kept all the market traders happy over that, then you must be doing a pretty good job. Trust me. Thank you very much. Great stuff. Well done. Okay, item 15, annual governance statement. I've got you here, but it looks like it's Steve. Over to you, young man. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, councillors. This probably seems very dry after the last report on markets, but believe me, it was exciting to draft. And on ACE's behalf, I'll take you through the report, but it's really the chief exec's part of the annual report that gets filled in each year. In fact, this year will be the very last year that this council will complete this statutory document called the AGAR. And there's I'll refer you throughout the report to when we get to the appendices, and you'll see a couple of pages from the AGAR, which should be familiar to you because that's what gets approved every year. And you have to sit through this ordeal every year, unfortunately. But it's a really important report because it sets out in one place all the internal control system. In summary, it should hopefully give you reassurance that the council is on track in terms of its governance. It also takes you through the internal auditor's latest report, so you have warts and all. It's unexpurgated. You can see exactly what the internal auditors said, and it's a statutory requirement for the full council to consider this report and the annual governance statement that's part of this report before you move on to the annual accounts, which I think gets really exciting, and that's the next report after this one. But if I take you through this one very briefly, I won't take you through every paragraph, but I'd like to highlight paragraph 2.3. Those bullet points set out the order in which council is expected to consider the various subjects in its annual report. Over the page, I'd like to draw your attention to paragraph 3.2 of the report. This first section is to try and summarise the effectiveness of the internal control system. Without being able to put any reliance on the internal control system, you wouldn't be able to sign off the accounts. You won't be able to place any reliance on any of the detailed reports that the council produces. So hopefully this provides you with a lot of reassurance. But in paragraph 3.2, it spells out the interim auditor's report in December, where he was quite scathing about the council's internal control system. And there's a lot of factors that went into that, but the main one being that we did have an RFO, a responsible finance officer, for most of last year. The finance team without an RFO did an admirable job at keeping the everyday financial procedures and processes going, but there were certain things that fell behind, like bank reconciliation, which is a basic control, as well as payroll journals, and obviously payroll is the number one cost at the council. So just those two weaknesses alone meant that the internal auditor had some reservations about the whole internal control system. And as it says in paragraph 3.2, the auditor stated that our sample testing did reveal weaknesses that would result in audit qualification, which is a terrible thing, and reporting to the external auditor if the AGAR were being signed off today. So that's about as about scathing as an internal auditor can get. However, the auditor did state that I'm at pains to point out that our sample testing did not uncover any issues with authorising or payment of expenditure items. So there was no evidence or suspicion of any wrongdoing. It was more the fact that some basic controls weren't being carried out properly. But by the time the auditor produced his latest report, which is appendix to this report, Appendix A, unfortunately it's not it's not titled Appendix A, but it looks similar to that. There's the whole of his final report for the year ended, which is dated 4th of June. I'm very pleased to say that the auditor concluded that the reported weaknesses had mostly been addressed, as well as many other improvements, including revising financial regulations, updating bank mandates, introducing audit trail improvements, strengthening corporate credit card usage, addressing loss-making activities, and tightening credit control of customer accounts. Those are mild wording, but the internal auditor was much happier with the state of play, as you can see from that report. That report in Appendix A is summarised then in Appendix B, which is the internal auditor's AGAR page. So there'll be 3 pages of the AGAR report that you'll see this evening, because it's a statutory requirement for you to consider or to sign off each of them. This first one in Appendix B is the annual internal audit report. All of his detailed report in Appendix A enabled him to conclude on Appendix B that he ticked all of the yes column, that he was content that those basic and very fundamental internal controls were all in place. So that was a big turnaround, which the finance team are mostly responsible for, but we also had help from across the organisation. So that's a really good success story. We then move on to the annual governance statement. So it's important that you understood that somebody completely independent, although he's called the internal auditor, he's an outsourced professional that is completely impartial and unbiased. That's what we're paying for the internal auditor, which is why he could give us such a scathing report in December. And believe me, if he wasn't happy, he would have given us a scathing report in June as well. So you can rely on the unbiased nature of his assessment of our internal control system. Having looked at that and hopefully being assured that we have turned that around, there's still room for improvement, by the way. We then move on to the annual governance statement. So in Appendix C, and apologies for all this paper, but unfortunately it's a statutory requirement. So Appendix C, which follows on from that AGAR page, is a series of pages with assertions in them. Now, jumping the gun slightly, each one of those assertions forms part of the AGAR page on Appendix D, which is the condensed annual governance statement. That is your official statutory annual governance statement. And that one, if you're content to approve it this evening, it gets signed by the chair of this committee meeting, the mayor, and the chief exec officer. So that's why this particular report is really ACE's rather than mine. So Appendix C takes each one of those assertions that's a one-liner in Appendix D and just explodes it out and provides you with a lot more narrative, which hopefully prior to this evening you've had the chance to read that. And what happens at most councils, most years, is there's a blanket assurance to the councillors that, yeah, we meet all of these assertions. But you'll see from Appendix C that SMT has gone through here, and ACE is the ultimate judge in this. So he's made the assessments whether we're partially or fully compliant with each of those assertions. And you'll see that we're not fully compliant on every one. As I said, there's room to improve, and we're very honest and open and transparent about that. We're confident that we will address all of those areas that we're not fully compliant on. But we did specifically ask the internal auditor, if we're not fully compliant, is that a no on Appendix D? And the internal auditor very clearly said no, as long as you're providing some level, and with these, as you'll see, or when we're partially, it's mostly compliant, as long as we've provided any controls within that assertion, then it's a yes. It's only if you didn't do anything at all that it will be a no. And therefore, based on all of that work, ACE is content to suggest to you that we meet all of those assertions on Appendix D. And if you're content, I'm obviously happy to take any questions, but if you're content with that, all those appendices and the report, then the recommendation is for the chair and the chief executive officer to sign that off. Any questions?
Tom. Not really a question, just congratulations to you and the team. Again, your delivery is really clear, and I just welcome the fact that you're able to deliver so evenly and in such a good manner that we can all follow. It is quite commendable. And yeah, I would just a vote of thanks to the team and more than happy for the chair and the CEO to sign this and their lives away.
Thank you, Tom. Caroline?
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you. The whole breath of fresh air that we're getting from the new team and the differences that we are seeing, I hope is refreshing for our residents, because we do take our role as councillors seriously and our officers do take theirs very seriously too. I'm more than happy for it to be signed off. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and likewise, thank you. But some of us around this in this chamber have probably been through 20 of these annual government statements, and probably more actually, because there's a mid-year statement as well. My question to you actually, and because officers do a lot of work on this, and you bring this to council. And we are expected to understand all the processes, which, you know, over time we do. But I just wonder, we have a Finance and Governance Committee, and they meet regularly. And I just feel that some of this process needs to be checked during the year. And I wonder what advice you would give us, whether we can change those F&G meetings to reflect some of this work that you're doing, because there's a lot of pressure at the end of the financial year to get this right. And what I think members may welcome is the opportunity of doing the governance on this during the year. So that's a question back to you, whether you think that's useful.
I'd be more than happy to attend F&G if it met more frequently, because I started on the 22nd of January and there's not been an F&G meeting since then. So there's a question about whether it meets frequently enough, but irrespective of how many times a year it meets, definitely there's more we could do. There's a statutory timetable that we can't affect. So it all boils down, and it will even more under the new SIPA regime, where we're not doing AGAR anymore, we're doing accounts, and the audit cycle much more akin to, well, Wiltshire Council, all other principal authorities in the country, and even the private sector. So we'd be much more in keeping with that. There will still probably be an interim audit, and we could bring that to F&G. But unfortunately, it'd be mostly, everything hinges, you know, yes or no, qualified or unqualified accounts on the year end. But what we could do is bring more update reports to F&G, so you can monitor and oversee the progress or not that we're making. I also think that finance should be providing more financial training to officers and to councillors. So, you know, we can offer, you know, basic, absolutely financial awareness for any councillor that is interested, and perhaps step that up for members of the F&G committee. So I don't think we've done enough of that in the past, and certainly I haven't done that since I started in January. So that both of those things I think would help F&G committee, but members generally feel more confident when you're going through this. I mean, one item might be taking you through the new set of accounts mid-year before it's the real numbers, and just explain some of the jargon that accountants use.
Just an additional point to reiterate, members will be aware that back in March we brought a number of financial reports to full council. One of those was particularly positive in terms of how we want to disseminate financial information going forward. Each committee will be receiving financial updates, the first of which I believe will be coming to Councillor Wells to Environment on the 1st of July. Because we feel that it's important that each committee member is able to hold their head of service to account in terms of the finances, and that is an important decision that was taken back in March. So we are enacting that. That is being brought into force. I don't disagree with any of the points that my RFO has made. We will also be, in the coming weeks, I'll be having a discussion with the administration about what the diary looks like for meetings for the following year, with a couple of suggestions about starting a piece of work around terms of reference, frequency, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hart.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Steve. Great presentation. I think I echo what the councillor is saying. Given the earlier year and the shift and the changes we see, you have identified some of the issues, including the chief executive. So I'd like to thank you for that. And I think it's an excellent idea for you to say that some of the councillors to take some finance training. I think that's a really good idea, something that I would certainly be looking forward to seeing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Askell. Charles.
Thanks, Sven. Yeah, just to echo everyone else, really good presentation, Steve. One question is about item 5 in Appendix C, fixed assets and equipment. You say that a updated asset register will be with us essentially by March 2025. Obviously, we've had an issue in my ward about an asset that we believed was a city council asset actually not being a city council asset. And I think given the context of maybe some of the debate we'll have later, I think it's very prudent. It would be very prudent for us to prioritise that so that we have a good knowledge, broad knowledge of where our assets are, and we can take that forwards and use it, particularly in the context of a debate, obviously, we'll be having later. So, yeah, is there any way we can prioritise that?
Yes, so it predates me, but this council, with the head of environmental services, invested in a new asset register system. It's now online, digital, much better security and control than an old Excel spreadsheet. I think Mark won't mind me saying that was bought primarily as an operational tool and a very good improvement over the records that that department had. But having received the interim audit report, which made it clear that our asset register was inadequate, which incidentally was the same asset register we've had for lots of years, but it had never been reported before. But anyway, he reported that it was inadequate, and I would agree with him. Therefore, there was discussions very urgently between Mark, myself, and the supplier of that asset register system to make the tweaks needed so that we can use it across the council, not just within the Environmental Services Department, but also be used by finance to make sure it ticks all the audit boxes as well. And very quickly, the supplier and Mark were able to confirm that it should do all those things. It's just feeding that machine to get it up to the starting point that takes so much time. That's why it'll take till March. We already have it. It's just a question of trying to load in all the records. It's much better, as I say, instead of one row on an Excel spreadsheet, you've now got a record with all the details of whatever asset it is, whether it's a vehicle or a building. If it's a building, you could have a copy of the lease and all the other documentation relating to that. If you have a vehicle, you can have your maintenance schedules and everything in there. So it's going to be really powerful compared to what officers had before then. But it just needs to be fed. So at the moment, I think we're loading all the operational departmental records in, but before the end of March, we'll make sure that all the other asset information's in so that we're compliant. And we meet all the requirements of the auditor in terms of the asset register rules. It's just a question of time. It won't have to be led by me, but I'll have to be involved. And there's sort of a priority order of the things I'm tackling at the moment. But if we do need extra resources, it won't be capacity that stops us doing it. If we need to throw more people at it, we've got the time to do that.
Thank you. Councillor Dalton.
Chairman, thank you, Steve. I sort of echoed a few months ago when you first came here to speak, you were a breath of fresh air for the council, and I echo that again tonight, and for members as well, for explaining everything in not simplistic terms, but easier terms I think we've ever understood before. And I've sat through, like Jeremy, a number of these and many of others around the table over the years, and I sort of echo the words that you said as well, which put the ASA, the Chief Executive, I'll call him tonight, what he explained as well. So I support that. Are you you're obviously after, nobody's moved anything yet. So on the report, do you want each one moved and agreed or on block?
We'll do the moving in a second, Councillor Dalton. Can we just have the debate and then?
Yeah, but no.
When we get there, I would suggest we do them individually, if that's okay. Okay,
well then I'm on or off. I will move that recommendations 5.1, 5.2, 5.3 to be taken individually then, if I've got a seconder for that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bayes.
Thank you, Chair. As Chair of F&G, I'd like to thank Steve and his team for all the great work they've been doing. I think the additional detail we've had in reporting new processes and the explanation he's given, particularly to the leaders, the administration leaders group, has been of great benefit. It's given us a better insight into the finances of the council, and I think going forward will make it easier for us to see exactly what's going on. Thank you.
Joe.
Thank you, Steve. Please pass on our thanks. I echo what others have said. Please pass on our thanks to your team and all the hard work. It's really good to see the audit findings and where there's lots of things are being completed. Thank you very much. And I've been looking at management accounts my whole life, and I think some training would be really valuable to lots of us. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have 3 recommendations, 2 to note, 1 to approve. Your preference is to take these individually. Is that correct? So, okay, 5.1. Proposer. Seconder. Councillor Tom Corbyn. All those in favour? Carried. 5.2. Proposer. Brian. Seconder. Jeremy. All those in favour? 5.3. Proposer. Brian again, because he's done he got in there first. Seconder. Caroline. All those in favour? Approved. Excellent. Thank you for that one, Steve. Good stuff. Sorry. This is a committee, not a game show. It's not won a teddy bear or anything yet, or a car. Look what you could have won, Steve. Yeah. Okay. Item 16, accounting statement for 23-24. Steve, over to you. Round 2.
Do you, just before we leave that previous item, do you want to sign now, or shall I bring both of them up, assuming that this item is also going to be? Yeah.
Right, bit of bureaucracy to contend with there, chaps, but on the way. Okay, accounting statement.
Thank you, Chair, councillors. So this is the second part of the AGAR, much shorter, you'll be pleased to hear, much shorter report, reminds you just from the previous report what the requirements of the AGAR are, sets out the accounting statements in section 3, and then the actual AGAR official accounting statements, again, looks like a very similar page of the AGAR, except instead of words and ticks, it's got numbers on. You've got the comparative, the first set of numbers on the left-hand side are those accounts that were reported and approved last year, 31st of March 23. So the right-hand side figures are the new figures for this year, 23-24, that I'm bringing to you. And if you're content to approve those, this will be another form that I've already signed to prove that I'm content with the with the accounts, sorry. And if you approve these accounts this evening, then the chair will also be invited to sign that statement. As you can see on the right-hand side, our opening balances and reserves were 1.982 million. And by the end of the year, at the bottom of those numbers, item 7, we were then at 2.3 million. So that's an increase of over £300,000. We'll, in the next report where we look at the outturn, we'll go into a bit more detail. So without confusing this particular report, that's all been conducted in accordance with the AGAR rules. The internal auditor has to go through those and audit them on behalf of the external auditor. So therefore, I can assure you that there's, again, somebody objective that's gone through, came in, visited, tested each of those figures, did some sample testing, required explanations and clarifications before he was content to sign off his internal audit report, which you saw in the previous report. So you can take assurance that these aren't just figures that I've come up with, they have been audited as well. And so I hope that you can resolve to, again, approve these this evening.
Okay, thank you. Questions? No. Okay. The recommendations are the council is asked to approve the annual accounting statement for 23-24. I'll move it from the chair. All those in favour? Any against? No. In that case, they are approved. Right. Item 17, budget monitoring and outturn report. Steve, round 3.
Yeah, sorry about this. Just to prove that we're not perfect in finance, there is an error in Appendix A, which I will explain when we get there. But in the meantime, if I can pass around some hard copy replacements for Appendix A, if I can give you half each and pass them along. We won't be going through every figure, but it's for completeness really, because when I realised we'd made the error, then it needed correcting for the record. Just introducing this report and taking you through. The report format is similar to the budget monitoring reports that have come to full council before now. And the convention is set out in 3.2. Unfortunately, accountants can be very inconsistent. So for the avoidance of any doubt at all, I've set out in paragraph 3.2 that red numbers in brackets are good. That might be counterintuitive, and I do apologise for that. But throughout the report and the appendices, red numbers in brackets are usually good, and black numbers without parentheses are usually bad. And it just sets that out in detail. But we'll go through the main ones, and I can bring that to your attention. There are 4 appendices to this report. So Appendix A, which is the one that I've circulated, so please ignore or strike through the one that was on your agenda you brought this evening, and the ones I've passed out replace that. So this is your revenue outturn for the year. It sets out all of the revenue cost centres in Appendix A. It looks like that, as you know from the handout, and it should have set out, as you see on the replacement, what the budget was, starting with on the left hand side first set of figures, the January 2023 full council budget goes through some adjustments made for brought forward budgets. When you hear officers talk about budget carry forwards from the previous year, that column is that. During the year, at the end of the year, we also carried forward budget from this year in question into 24-25. So that's what the third column is. So the second column is where we brought forward budgets from 22-23 into 23-24. And the third column is where we then didn't finish spending those budgets or completing those projects, and we carried them forward into 24-25. Apologies for labouring the point, but it's important that you understand how we derive these figures. And then there should have been the final year-end budget position. Then there's the actual income and expenditure that was achieved during the year, and then there's the variance. And obviously the whole point of an outturn report is to show you whether or not we came in on budget, whether that's expenditure or an income, and whether there's any variances. So you don't really need to understand all the numbers. It's on the right hand side where there's a variance in pounds and a variance in percentage terms. That's the most important thing. So Appendix A sets out the revenue cost centres and their outturn, their results at the year end in terms of whether they were they came in underspent, which will be red in brackets, or whether they were overspent, which they'd be black. So you can see that the bottom right hand final result for the whole council is £62,740, and it's black, which means we were overspent. When you add up all of our revenue cost centres or everyday service delivery across the whole council, we were £62,000 overspent, which is very close to coming in on budget. Appendix B is the same, but for your capital programme, for your capital scheme. So I won't go through the whole thing. It's the same layout as before. The first few columns set out how we arrive at the total budgets figure, which is around about the middle column, total capital budgets, and you're comparing that total budget with the actual to the right-hand side of it. And then the difference between those two, like in Appendix A, gives you the variance and then the variance percentage compared to the original budget. And again, those two final columns are the most important ones from Appendix B. And you'll see at the bottom of that right-hand column. The total for all of the capital programme was red in brackets, which is good news. That's an underspend in expenditure terms or an over-recovery in income terms. So £767,000 to the good. But if you look up 2 lines, you'll see that that includes all the Section 106 money from the River Park projects and £98,000 of SIL. So between the two of those, there's £816,000 that under AGAR has to be treated as income in the year. And because there's no expenditure against any of that yet, it's just pure profit. Which makes the situation look much rosier than it actually is, because well, from a common sense point of view, accountants can exercise some common sense. That doesn't make any sense, because most of that, if not all of it, will have to be spent in future years. We shouldn't bank it as income in 1 year. But also from an accounting and auditing perspective, now we're no longer under the, I mean, these were compiled and had to be compiled under the AGAR regime, but this is the last year we're doing AGAR, because from the 1st of April this year, we're now a principal authority. So that's why we have the extra audit fees, and we're now subject to a much more stringent accounting and auditing regime. Under those rules from SITFA, from the Accounting Institute that we have to follow, you're not allowed to treat Section 106 or SIL as income in the year. We have to treat it as deferred income on the balance sheet, which means it would never come through the income and expenditure account anyway. So from both a common sense point of view and from a new accounting regime point of view, we need to exclude those really. And that's what, just jump in Appendix C, that's what Appendix D sets out to do. It takes the AGAR result for the year, which is a good news story when you combine the capital and the revenue, and you take into account everything, all the results for the year. There's a £345,000 profit under AGAR, and that's what is in the AGAR statement that the chair and I have signed, because that's what you have to show it as. However, when you take out the Section 106 money and the SIL money, we come back to 468,000 in the black, which means it's a bad news story. That's us spending more money than we're earning. There's no budgets in Appendix D. This is not about overspending the budget or underspending the budget. This is purely in money terms. You would say profit or loss account, you know, how much did we make? And the AGAR makes it look as though we achieved a big profit, but unfortunately, if we were doing the accounts under the new SITFA regime for last year, we wouldn't have included those 2 big income streams, and we'd be showing the loss as it is. So that's Appendix D, and then just filling in the blank. Appendix C lists all of the variances in the individual accounts, and obviously I wasn't going to give you hundreds of account lines, but that is us officers going through, finding all of the variances that were either greater than 50,000 overspend against the budget, or greater than £50,000 underspend, or anything that was getting quite close, because again, for transparency and openness, we're not going to try and hide behind a high variance if we can explain it. So it's all those large variances that are then explained in the body of the report. So I wasn't going to take you through the rest of the report, because the rest of the report is all about explaining each of those £50,000 plus variances, and you can see all those explanations from officers. Happy to take questions on any of those, but just to finish off the introduction, Section 4 is on all the more detailed revenue cost centres, Appendix A and Appendix C. Section 5 is a similar explanation of capital variances, Appendix B and Appendix C. And then we've got Section 6, which is really trying to cut through all of that and say, so what does all this mean? And applying some common sense. And I would refer you again to Appendix D, where we're showing actually this is a bad news story, that we spent more than we earned by £468,000. And the recommendations, as you see, are to note that financial position and to hopefully support the officers in this year to make sure that we don't end up at the same position at the end of this year with a large variance in terms of our expenditure over our income. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Steve. At this point, I'm going to bring in the question that we deferred from the item 3 on the agenda from Councillor Rimmer. So, Councillor Rimmer, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So this is my question to the administration. Given that, as outlined in the profit and loss outturn, Appendix D, the council made a loss of nearly £470,000 in financial year 23-24, representing 50% of general reserves, following a £360,000 loss in 22-23. We are now on track for the reserves to be depleted, to be acting unlawfully, and to be bankrupt by the beginning of financial year 25-26. How has this been allowed to happen? Why has it taken the appointment of a new chief executive for this to be discovered? Given the reliance on officers answering questions relating to policy and finances, to what extent can the administration actually be said to be in control of this council? And a short follow-up point to that as well, which is that I believe if this was a district council, we would already have been declared to be bankrupt by the outturn and reserve levels and the prediction of where we will be.
Thank you, Councillor Rimmer.
Chairman, to whom is that question addressed?
Admin.
To the administration.
Admin would like to take that straight off the bat.
I would like to ask Steve for how many years this position has been building. It's not something that has arisen just under the current administration. My understanding is that this has gone on for about 8 years now, so covering at least 2 administrations. My personal view is, given that information, I don't see any point in raking over the coals of what's happened 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. I think we're very lucky that we have got a chief executive and a finance officer who've got to grips with this. None of us, I don't think, is an accountant. I don't think so. And I think we're very lucky that we've got somebody that's got a handle on this, pointed out the problem, and we can do something about it.
Firstly, I think I don't want to underplay the seriousness of this issue in the slightest, and I do think a lot of the issue here goes back many years in terms of the birth of Salisbury, a city council, and a lot of people's expectations of the city council to be a district council. We've also grown rapidly over the year, taking on many assets from Wiltshire Council, some of which we opposed the idea of, but taking on many assets and taking on greater roles within the city. And we have grown at a rapid rate over the last, since 2009. So we have known for a while that there has been, we needed to have a strengthening of our finance section of the council, and that we have now put in place and done. So yes, a lot of these problems are historic, but I would also say that actually this year there has been some specific issues that have caused this loss. Firstly, we had the national insurance. We found out that we had been not paying the right amount of national insurance for quite a few years, and that has caused us to probably have a bill of around £100,000. We've also had issues in the sense that the crematorium, for a number of reasons, including one of its contractors who we had a contract with going bust, we have underachieved the amount of money we normally do from there by about 200,000. So that explains roughly 300,000 of this amount of money. If you chuck in other issues, including the amount of money we had to spend this year on tree surgery and the amount of money we've had to spend extra on maintenance of the buildings, and then you chuck in the extra issue that we've had to pay a lot more agency staff because we've had a turnover in terms of the management of this council, this year's expenditure is understandable. I'm not playing it down. It's a big issue, and we will have to look at many ways of resolving it. But I think you can understand why we have had this loss this year. There is the fundamental problem, though, which we will have to resolve, is whether we are a district council or whether we are a parish council. And that, I think, is a longer, deeper issue for this council.
Thank you, Chairman. Steve, I just wanted to know, is that the building of 47 Global Row also included on that profit and loss?
No, because I think the receipt was received in May, I think, of this year. So that's in this year's books. It's not in these accounts.
Okay. Or it is a big loss. It is a concern as well, despite that last year or year before we have increased the precept, which is quite a extortionate amount. So the question lies in the future: are we going to keep on making that extra loss and let the public pay for their for our mistakes, or something that we can't get hold of? Because we certainly cannot see public keep on paying extra precept on year for something that we can't get hold of. So this is something that I would recommend that we should really follow and see where our mistake is and not carry on doing so. Thank you.
Councillor Last, did I see your hand up?
As a new member of this council and listening to what has been said, it is quite clear that this is a long-standing or long-growing deteriorating situation, going back to a previous administration where the councillors were not asking the right questions, did not necessarily have the right skill mix. The officers, who I understand are no longer with us, were not fully conversant with appropriate knowledge and skills. So it is no good raking over what has gone. It is now a question of how we deal with it. Some will try to make political capital out of it, but I believe that the councillors in previous administrations have done the best they can. And let's move on. Don't say, oh, it's their fault, his fault, her fault. It is now a question of how we make sure that we carry on as a council being as efficient as we can and meeting the needs of our community. Too easy to start blaming others. Let's see what we can do now.
Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, Chair. I think all of the responses so far from the administration have just been laughable. They've just been absolutely pathetic. You are treating Salisbury residents with complete contempt, and you have done since you became the administration in 2021. So I just want to ask a question to you, Steve, if I may. What were the reserves in the financial year 2021-22? I believe you have those figures.
No, I don't have those figures with me, I'm afraid. You can see from the AGAR what they were for the last 2 years. I don't know if that helps you, councillor. Yeah, but we did grow it by 1.98 to 2.3. But of course, that's under AGAR, so that includes all the Section 106, all the SIL. I have gone back. It's not part of this report, unfortunately, but I have gone back and looked through the last 7 or 8 years of AGARs and taken what they state, which includes all the Section 106 and SIL money we've ever received, and stripped those out to then produce a much truer profit and loss result for each of those years. Part of the cause of getting to this point without having seen this over the horizon is because the AGAR itself, as we've already talked about, mixing different amounts of the capital, revenue, Section 106, SIL, putting those all together like we did in January this year. So the budget report in January said that we've got £2 million reserves. On the one hand, that's true, but on the other hand, it implies that that's usable reserves when it was never usable reserves because lots of it was Section 106 and SIL. But according to AGAR, as you've seen, you just ignore that and you just put it all together. So whatever the figure for reserves in 2021, pick any year you want, you have to go through the exercise of taking out all the accumulated Section 106 and SIL to get a meaningful amount of reserves.
No, that's great. I understand though that the reserves was somewhere in the region, even taking into account that S106 and SIL shouldn't have been included, or they were included under the old accounting framework, but now not. They were still around about 1 million or just over 1 million, something along those lines.
3 years ago, they were, over 1 million. Yes, I think.
And now they're 400,000.
And that's a simple sum of what the reserves were at the beginning of the year 2 financial years ago, and then the £300,000 plus loss 2 years ago, and then the £468,000 loss. Yeah, the only way we can absorb those losses in across the council is to take them from general reserve. So that's why the general reserve, excluding every other pot of over £1 million, just over 1 million, has come down now to the sort of level that £400,000 or so, because that's 2 years of losses. Well,
I think that says it all, doesn't it? The reserves have been depleted. It's looking like we'll make a similar. No, rubbish. We'll be making probably a loss of around about the same amount this year, unless something drastically changes, which I think a precept rise or major cuts to services will likely be happening as a result of this. So clearly, you just can't manage your budgets. You just can't manage them. So I think it's an absolute disgrace that we've got to this position. And frankly, how you can sit here and say, oh, it's a long-standing problem, it's been going on for ages, when clearly the reserves have been depleted from below where they should be, very specifically within the last 3.5 years. I just think it's incredible. I just can't believe it.
Councillor Nevin. Sorry, Councillor Caroline Corbyn.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to point out that Councillor McGrath was just very, very disrespectful. How can you laugh while somebody is trying to speak in the chamber? You are a disgrace. As Councillor Tomes has pointed out, there are many reasons.
Caroline, turn it down a little bit.
Okay.
Be civil to each other, please.
Yeah.
It's a parliamentary leaders debate. We're a grown up.
No, I know, but I haven't actually been disrespectful. But as Councillor Tomes pointed out, there has been many things. I mean, 4 years ago, we were in COVID, so understandably our staff were still paid. So there's all of that. So it's understandable we made a bigger loss. But one of our biggest things that was a big waste of time, and was thanks to Councillor McGrath, was the parish poll, because that could have just been put forward as a motion to council.
Ladies and gentlemen, one at a time, please. One at a time. Councillor last. Caroline.
Thank you. And it has been put forward as a simple motion to council as, please, if you raise the precept to X number above 5%, could we please go for a parish poll? It could have saved 39,000. So added to what Councillor Tomes alluded to with the trees and everything else, then we would have been in a much better financial position. Thank you.
Councillor Nutt.
So soon, I thought there was a few people in front of me, but anyway.
Jeremy, can you move the mic a bit closer to you, please? I can't hear what you're saying.
Sure, thank you. I agree with Councillor Tomes and seeing the graph over the last 10 years of how the budget's been presented. I think whether it was a Conservative administration, a Lib Dem administration, but it looks like, you can go back 4 administrations, even 5 if you want to. It's immaterial. The situation is that we've got, under the rules that we as councillors were working under, we were given advice that our reserves were at a certain level. And I think you've been told that those reserves were included, from the AGAR score, included SIL and S106 monies. And I think that inflated and gave us a wrong position of our reserves. And that is reflected in my question earlier about the governance of this, because these are things that councillors need to understand during the year. And we can then make decisions, whether it's reduction of services or whatever. And I think that it's important that councillors are aware of this position. What we have found by having a new team, they've come in and they've been absolutely analytical over our income and our expenditure. And we are today seeing this figure for last year of a loss of 468,000. I don't take any pride in or anything in saying that this shouldn't have happened. This, under the old system, we wouldn't have seen this. And that's the important fact. That's so important. And I absolutely take my hat off to the finance officer and the chief executive for actually uncovering what could be a horrible hole that we suddenly go down over the years coming. So thank you. Yes, we're going to have to do something about this, and no, we don't take it lightly. And of course, we will be debating how we reduce this overspend. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Councillor Dalton.
Chairman, I mean, how can I? That wasn't me, I don't think. How can I follow that? Jeremy, that was very well said from what I want to say is an elder statesman of the council. I hope you don't mind me saying that, which I hope that some of your more junior members would listen to rather than playing schoolboy politics, which is what I've just heard a few moments ago. And I have to add to that, thank goodness that member is not standing next year.
Victoria.
Thank you, Chair. Again, like Councillor Dalton, I just want to echo Jeremy's words. I think he spoke very well and very measured. You know, we've all in the past few days had the opportunity to be briefed by the Chief Exec and by our RFO on this situation. You've all been offered that. You've all seen the graphs, or been offered to see the graphs. We as councillors over the years, we've worked on the advice of our officers. We all sat here in January and looked at the paperwork that said things are rosy. We all agreed to that, as the year before and the year before that. That was the information our officer gave us, and we can only work to that information. We can look more detailed, we should look in more detail, but that was the information we were given. I'm very proud of our new Chief Exec and our new RFO to have grasped this and gripped this and come to us as soon as they have found this problem out. ASA has said that this information was presented to him last Monday. A week later, we're here and discussing it now. ACE has been very clear with the leaders that he has made very clear direction to his SMT about how to get a grip on this and how to resolve this and how we will move forwards. And I'm looking forward to working with him and the SMT to sort this out.
Thank you, Councillor Charlson. Tom.
That's Councillor Tom Corkin. Look, I think as a council and our current administration, which is as mixed as members wish to make it in terms of how much you wish to take part, I only draw attention to the fact that last year there was no Conservative budget forthcoming. That's not a dig. I'm just making the point purely because Councillor McGrath made such an attack, and obviously there could have been a Conservative budget last year, and there wasn't. Moving historically backwards, the previous two administrations decided to make big increases at the beginning of the 4 years, and then that money effectively tapered down, so that by the time councillors were elected at the start of their term, they had to decide how to deal with that deficit. And so they had to make a huge increase on the precept on each occasion. This administration has acted entirely differently. We've tried to keep the costs down to a bare minimum whilst trying to decide what it is we wish to continue to actually do as a council. So we have had the position of each year agreeing a precept increase, and we've kept it as tight as we dare. So we've cut down on all the things that we have done before and decided what we wish to continue with. And this is the same thing that will face us in our next budget setting in the upcoming year, which I think all members are agreed we are all going to have to work towards and decide what it is we want. And it might be that when we come to doing our budget setting, we have 3 or 4 different proposals to go through on the floor, and it could be a very, very long meeting. But the point of what we do and have been doing each and every year is effectively a constant review of where we are. We are all obviously very grateful to our RFO and CEO for all the work that they've done and the way in which they're bringing this to us. So again, I can say thank you to them for that. But for us as councillors, it's how we move forwards, and it's what we want to have as our debate for how we're going to increase the precept or not, and if not, obviously what it is we're going to cut. And that's for all of us to take part in. I don't actually mind the fact that Councillor McGrath was a bit attacking in the context of trying to say maybe we should be doing things differently. But you're only so involved. And it's how involved you want to be in the future that makes the difference. I must commend Councillor Nettle's words as being very, very sensible and very pragmatic in terms of where we are. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hawke.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I would just echo what Councillor Last said. We are where we are, and I think it is very important that we find a solution, because if we're going to continue like that, it is going to cost us a huge issue. Now, I just wanted to ask two things. If we were to continue, does that mean that we have to have increase of precept, or do we have to borrow more money in order to safeguard our reserve? And that's quite important. And what I really would want to do, ask everyone here, is next year, none of us might not be here. What are we really leaving for our future councillors who's going to come into this administration or this councillor and see this huge depth, which I don't think I would want to put my name onto it, because as we have time, I would request everyone to come together, forget party politics, and make something better of this, so we can leave something for the future councillors that they feel good about, or we will be embarrassed. So I think we need to find a solution sooner than later. Thank you.
Okay, so we've had a bit of debate. I've got no more names. So now we've had a bit of a spat between each other. Are there any questions we have for the RFO? Leanne.
Thank you. I'm a bit concerned about this fat pot of section 106 we're sitting on. At some point, once you have clarity, could you then give us clarity about what that relates to, what the certain timelines are that has been sent by, and what liabilities we've taken on as a consequence? Is that something that is doable?
Yes, absolutely. So to start with, bring everybody up to date. And to be able to monitor the situation during the year, SMT has already agreed that as part of this year's budget monitoring report, which sets out, each full council meeting, and will now be coming to service committee. So each service committee will get their subset of the overall budget monitoring report. But that's always included, detailed explanations of variances, which is important. But given the last 2 years of losses and the impact that has on reserves, SMT have agreed that we should part of that budget monitoring report to full council each meeting will have an appendix that's got the reserves and all those pots explained. That just sets out whether or not any changes we make during this year, operational changes to try and save as much money as possible, because we mustn't get down anywhere closer to zero in terms of our real usable general reserves. Otherwise, we act unlawfully. So it's important that councillors can see what the overall council position is at each meeting to see whether or not the actions SMT have taken are making the situation better or not. You don't want to wait until the year end and find out that we became unlawful in November or something. So that will give you the overall picture more regularly and in a lot more detail. But in answer to your specific question, which is, can you see a breakdown of the section 106 amounts, the receipts we've received for each development, and what's the expiry date on there, and whether or not we've got any money left and what obligations there are. Absolutely, I'll be bringing forward a report. It's up to you where it comes. I think in the past it came to F&G. There's even a report, I think, that the previous RFO, I think it was the clerk, I think, brought to last July's F&G meeting, I think. So I could do, and it did include appendices if you want to refer back to it, that set out all those individual Section 106 receipts. So I can refresh that and bring you that, as well as the SIL amounts as well. So you'll be able to see even in the detail exactly how much money we've got.
Supplementary.
Not supplementary, but separate. Are we currently in that unlawful territory with our reserves? And if so, or if there is a possibility, is there a penalty to that or any retribution as a result of acting unlawfully?
So you may have heard of something called a Section 114 report, which is what other councils, RFOs, have issued when they believe that there's not enough reserves and financial resources to be able to meet all current and foreseeable liabilities. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be that we've got zero. It can be any number that any cautious, prudent RFO believes is what we need. Currently, as your RFO, we're solvent, and there's no indication that we can't meet any of our current and foreseeable liabilities. So I haven't issued a Section 114. But by bringing this to ASA and SMT and bringing it to councillors, I'm clearly hoping that with your support, officers can address the overspend of expenditure against income this year, and to get to the end of the year by replenishing to some extent those reserves. It won't get us up to the level that that your policy actually sets out, the 2 months worth of gross expenditure, the 1.25 million roughly. So we still fall short of that. But there's a gap between zero, what an RFO might deem to be unlawful in terms of there's not enough money left, which could be any number up, above zero, and where we are now, which I think is in safe but serious territory, and we must take corrective action, or we might run the risk of becoming unlawful. And then there's a much more headroom to get back to the 1.25 million. So at the moment, I think we're okay, but not if we carry on like we spent last year. As you saw, we can't afford to spend £400,000 more than our income this current year.
Zach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to reiterate the final point from our RFO, we cannot overspend this year the way in which we did last year. If we continue to do that, we will become unlawful. And therefore, our officer team are dedicated to resolving this difficult financial challenge and ensuring the survival of this council and putting it on a sustainable footing going forward. That is our number one primary concern.
Well, I asked the question of the administration, and honestly, I just think it beggars belief that the response is essentially, we don't understand the figures and it's the last lot's fault. The last administration didn't lose £800,000 in 2 years. And it's my understanding of being a councillor and the administration is that the administration sets policy and instructs officers, and the officers enact it. Everything seems to be just put back to the officers. What is the administration's actual policy? How are they finding £500,000 in order to keep the council solvent? And if they don't have a policy, what's the point of the administration and what is the point of having councillors? If we're just letting the officers run it without any scrutiny whatsoever, then it begs that question.
Okay, so now we come to the fun bit. Recommendations. 7.1, the council notes the financial position at the end of the 23-24 year and offers explanations of the variances over 50k. 7.2, acknowledging the financial overspends in the past 2 years, officers will be supported to comply with financial regs and where necessary, pause services where finances have been exhausted in the year. Do I have a proposer? You proposing, Caroline? We've gone through the debate. That's
Yeah,
the
I did
recommendation.
put my hand up just now, but you didn't see me. I have a question on 7.2, which is that where it says about that where necessary to pause services when the finances have been exhausted, how do we relay that to our residents?
I don't know. My answer to that is you're the administration.
Well,
over to you. Okay. 7.1, 7.2. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Riddle. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bolwell. All those in favour? 1, 2, okay, everybody. Okay, that motion, those recommendations are carried. Thank you very much. I'd just be interested to know if it was a Conservative administration in this position. I wonder if the tone of the debate would have been quite so conciliatory from our opposition. One to ponder. Right,
Chair.
item.
That's a
item 18.
political remark, and you're not supposed
Sorry,
to be making
I'm not
political
making- I'm
remarks.
just making observation.
Chair, can I just break from the agenda slightly to ask that we ask for some more jugs of water because we're all kind of running out.
Actually, yeah, we've got a few bits and pieces to go, so we'll pause it here for 5 minutes, top up with water. If anybody wants to go to the boys or girls room, be my guest. I am neutral. All right, 1 minute warning, everybody. Okay, ladies and gents, moving on. Item 18, crematorium roof. Mark, over to you.
Good evening, everybody. So this is a request for funding for a capital project, an urgent capital project in reference to the crematorium. As you're aware, the Salisbury crematorium is one of the City Council's key assets in terms of the service provided to the community, and also, in addition, obviously providing significant income with an annual target for this financial year set at 1.1 million. Now, this report sets out the urgent case for the council to authorise an unbudgeted capital expenditure to replace the crematorium roof and enhance this important asset. Now, you may think, hang on, we replaced the roof last year, and indeed we did. We replaced the copper roof on the chapel, which was replaced at a cost of £123,112. That was a planned capital project. The section of roof that is currently failing is the flat roof that covers the administrative and support areas of the building. And the severity of the problem can be seen in the photos that I've included on the report. And they're also up on the screen up there. So you can see quite significant damage is occurring inside of the building.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Mike, you finished or are you still going?
I'm still going? I'm sorry, I'll rattle on a little bit longer. Sorry. We have, although it's not specified actually, sorry, in this paper, we have tried to repair or to put a repair onto the roof on 2 separate occasions over the last 12 months, and unfortunately that has not worked, and water is still finding its way into the building, as you can see in those pictures. The current flat roof is a mineral felt, which has a lifespan of 10 to 15 years, and what we're proposing to replace it with is an upgraded membrane which has a guarantee for at least 20 years and an expected service life of 40 years. Now, the cost to replace the flat roof with that membrane will be a maximum net cost of 175,000, with a minimum net cost of 135. The variance in the terms of those two costs is because without taking the roof off the building, we don't know what condition the wooden decking is underneath. So we have to assume the £175,000 assumes it all needs replaced. The £135,000 assumes that everything's good. I suspect it'll be somewhere in between. So in terms of impact and mitigation, so to carry out these urgent works, the customer-facing side of the crematorium would need to be closed during August and September. That means no services can take place on site. However, staff will still be able to access the site during works and the cremators will still be operational. The works are proposed for August and September because of the expected favourable weather, and historically these are quieter months in terms of bookings. So we're proposing to use this building here, the Guildhall, to hold services on a Monday, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, looking to exclude Tuesdays because of the market day and how busy it is out on the square. We're proposing that they'll have up to 4 services a day, and that's to allow adequate time for the service, families to disperse, and the staff to set up for the next service. Not quite as many services as we are able to hold at the crematorium, but that's because we have sort of at the crematorium, you know, there's a flow in terms of how people come in and then exit the building. We wouldn't be able to operate in quite the same way here. Now, I point out that there is a risk, obviously, that the crematorium income will be affected during these works, as the community may wish to choose to have their services elsewhere. And there is also a risk that future income will be affected if funeral directors get used to using alternative crematoria during the building works and fail to return to Salisbury. Again, I think those are fairly, or certainly that 5.8 post is probably quite a minimal risk, but of course it is a risk nonetheless. Given the uncertainties, it is very difficult to predict the potential loss of income due to the works. However, based on last year, when we had to close for 2 years for the copper roof, it will probably exceed 60 to 70,000 pounds of lost revenue. There is a minimal disruption to the Guildhall diary in terms of the income generation for this building, because most of the bookings that are in for this in for the Guildhall are in for August and September. In for August and September fall on weekends, and so will be unaffected. Internal council meetings will have to be moved to other sites though during this time. So the risk to the council, if we don't, if works aren't approved, are that the crematorium offices will be unusable during the forthcoming autumn and winter months, as the associated health and safety risk simply cannot be mitigated, and the water ingress, we simply can't stop it. We have tried, as I've said, to patch it up a couple of times. So either an alternative office space would need to be provided, which again would come at a cost, or the crematorium would need to close until funding for works was identified from another source. The annual lost net revenue from closing the crematorium indefinitely would exceed £500,000, which would obviously financially be catastrophic for the council, necessitating emergency action. So if untreated, the leak is likely to spread and cause deterioration for both roof structure and internal walls and floor, reducing the asset value of the facility and increasing the eventual repair costs. So it is recommended to this council that the committee approve the use of up to £175 of capital expenditure for the replacement of the flat roof and the enhancement of the crematorium. And it's proposed that the cost of the works be met from the capital receipt of £338,474 received recently from the sale of 47 Blue Hall Road. It's worth me just emphasising, after hearing the report from our RFO, that this expenditure would not be hitting the general reserves. This is coming out of the pot of funding that is ring-fenced for capital works, which is what this project would be. So in terms of that £400,000 overspend, this, we have identified an income stream that is sat there, and it would not be affecting the general reserves in that way. But happy to take any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Questions, anybody? Sam.
Thank you, Chair. Very quick question. These numbers, the potential loss of income, the 60 to 70,000 pounds, is that just the losses from the crematorium, or does that sort of include any of the potential clawback from holding service in the Guildhall?
So that's the overall expenditure we're loss of income, that we're predicting loosely based on what we lost in terms of income when the crematorium was closed in July and August of last year for the roof works. As I said, we're not expecting the disruption to the Guildhall to really be a major problem. I've sat down with the Guildhall team here and reviewed all of their bookings. There is very little that is not going to affect their income generation, hardly at all.
Thank you, Chairman. Mark, how long did that take to come to this position, this roof?
So as I've said, the roof, we've been aware that it needed some remedial works, and we have tried to repair it using a patch repair over the last 12 months. However, and we were hopeful that that would do the trick. However, both of those patch repairs have obviously failed, and not the water has still found a way in through the patch repairs. Not in the same place, but where there's a problem, the water ultimately finds a way. So we have known that this has been an issue for the past 12 months, but it has become a problem in terms of we can't mitigate against it any further. There's no point us trying to patch it up, for a third time. It simply is unlikely to work.
because the reason I say this is that it's no criticism. I'm sure Officer does a tremendous job. But for life of me to think we spent so much money on the crematorium previous years to, I think, over £1 million or something. Corrected me, I could be wrong. But for us to not to see this issue coming, knowing that we've repaired another roof, it is a very difficult situation to judge. And also, by looking at your calculation, okay, you earmark that £338,000 for a 47 Blue Borough, it can offset. But you have to also consider the loss that it's going to be making around about 70,000. It could be more. That will reflect the loss of the capital budget at the end, because that you have to count that on, because my calculations say it's going to be about 220,000, including that £70,000 loss. And frankly, what you have presented to us, we are damned if we do, we are damned if we don't, because we have to spend that money in order to sustain the crematorium. So we are in a really no situation to say no, because that is something done. But realistically, when we are when you run a home or business like that, when this small thing appears, we really need to address it. Not wait and give it a go. I mean, 175,000, you can build a 3-bedroom house for that one. But then again, that is what it's going to cost us. It's a very difficult one. And even if we say no to it, it's going to be very difficult either. We're going to have a loss income. So I am disappointed. That should have been raised a long time ago. Thank you.
I think Chief Exec wants to jump in a second.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The crematorium roof is a long-term issue that has been challenging officers for a number of years. And it is important for me that we address some of our long-standing, long-term issues as a council. Forgive me when I say this with all due respect, that by undertaking this work, it protects income of this authority. It is a significant health and safety issue. And pictures speak 1,000 words. In addition, that this work will protect a vital public service that we undertake when people are at their most vulnerable. Specifically in relation to the lost revenue, which is an important point to make, one of the decisions that I've taken is to pause the repairs to the crematorium wall that were being undertaken at a cost of £70,000 out of our revenue budget. So hopefully, what will be a like-for-like measure to offset any loss of revenue. And the last point, just to underline, in relation to capital expenditure, this is an enhanced roof replacement, which sees a number of technical and practical improvements, and therefore we can treat this expenditure as capital rather than as a repair, which would cost revenue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Last.
Do I presume that you have undertaken investigation as to the cost by finding contractors who could do it, and B, that as to when they could do it and how long it would take to do it?
Yes. So in terms of contractors, so we did a tendering exercise just over 3 years ago, and we have a contractor that the council uses. That contract is up for retender next year, but at the moment that contractor is D&M Maintenance, and they have contractors that are able to come in and do this work. In terms of having been lined up and ready to go, yes, in terms of the if the agreement is tonight to progress with the works, the contractors are ready to get going and order this, place an order for the roofing and the parts and the materials shortly, and we would be able to do the works in August and September.
That is this year, and they are, from what you're saying, they are fully aware of all the problems that may arise.
Correct, yes.
Good, thank you.
Councillor Times.
Yeah.
all the builders I've ever employed, obviously with the exception of Ricky Hodges here, have always stayed longer than they've said they would be in the first instance. And what slightly worries me about this, although I'm totally supportive of it, is that we've got a very big event coming here in October. And if they do, due to weather, due to illness, due to anything like that, overstay their welcome at the Cren, do we have a plan B in case it coincides with what the big event we've got coming here in October?
So, well, Councillor King has offered up a plan B, actually, I believe, which is the use of St Mark's. Yes, which although that only came through, or I only saw the email earlier today, that could act as a plan B. But the contractor is fully aware that the 30th of September is the absolute last day that they can be on site. Now, I have every faith that their project management will be good, and that they will complete the works on time. Certainly they did last year when the copper roof was being replaced, and so that they actually finished slightly earlier than the project time. So I have every faith that they will. But yes, potentially there is a plan B, although a conversation will need to be had with regards to that.
Thank you, Councillor Bayliss.
Chair, capital projects can always be a bit of a touchy issue, as we know from what is above us. How many times has that been kicked into the long grass? It's going to need doing at some point. The crematorium, even though this may come over as a bit macabre, is one of our principal sources of income. And I'm a firm believer in the fact that we need to speculate to accumulate. So we need to protect that source of income by doing any necessary work. There's never a good time to do it. Summer is not good because of the heat. The winter is not good because of the cold, but it needs to be done. And I fully support this capital project. Thank you.
Councillor Herbert.
Thank you. I think this raises an interesting question about the state of our infrastructure. I would be interested in knowing if the council has a planned maintenance programme or anything of the sort, and if there were any other bits of our building fabric that's nearing the end of its life cycle.
So yes, I had a planned maintenance schedule drawn up just over 12 months ago, and this administration provided a budget to start work on that. I'm happy to share that at a relevant meeting. It's about 200 or 300 page document that covers almost every building and asset that we've got in terms of what the surveyor has observed and what is recommending that we cover off in terms of repairs, maintenance, etc. for our buildings.
Me again. Not going to touch that anymore. But Chair, thank you. I just find this debate interesting. When I left school, I did a carpentry and joinery apprenticeship and spent many years in the building trade. And I'm a carpenter by trade and spent a lot of time constructing flat roofs. And I have to say they're crap. You never know when a flat roof is going to leak. It's got a 15-year or 20-year lifespan. It could be a lot less than that. The actual run on them is rubbish, and water normally lies in the middle of it. And why anybody would go for a flat roof, I don't know. I never would. But it's just interesting listening to the debate councillors here who think they're builders and why aren't we doing this and why aren't we doing that? This probably is only here tonight because it's over £50,000. Otherwise, the officer would have got on and done it. Quite frankly, it's a pity that it's here. And I'm sure somebody in the room will probably say it's the administration's fault that the roof's collapsed. But, it's a maintenance issue, isn't it? It needs to be got on and done with, repaired, and let's do it. Unless you want the buildings to rot like half of the Wiltshire ones are in the city does. Imagine sitting in on a debate on, the state of Grosvenor House would be here for weeks.
Thank you, Councillor Dalton. I'm no builder, but the reputation of flat roofs does precede them. That's probably all I'll say on that. Councillor Nettle.
Thank you very much. Just a clarification. So we're not going out to tender. We are using our current supplier.
Correct.
That seems interesting in itself. No, sorry, I meant that if it was this is a critical site. And I would have thought, presumably they're contracting a specialist roofing company to do this. I'm not a specialist in roofing companies, but I just feel that this is an important asset to the city, and I would have expected us to get professional expertise from somebody who actually deals specifically in this. And the company you've mentioned probably has got some connection. However, given the criticality of this asset, have we got a clause in the contract if they fail to deliver by the time that they said they were going to? There's a financial reward for this, because as members have said, this is our income generation. I hate to use the word for that of the crematorium, but theoretically it is, as well as providing an important service to residents. And I think any delay needs to be reflected by the company that's got this contract. My second observation in your report is that we spent a long time just before COVID of ensuring that the services were streamed. And my God, I'm so grateful that we did, because that was a godsend to many of the relatives who couldn't attend the funerals during COVID restrictions. And I just wonder if the services are going to be in this room or any other room in the Guildhall, whether that facility will be offered. Thank you.
It will.
Can we keep our questions to the point, please? We have still 10 items on the agenda to get through, so if we can rattle through, it would be appreciated.
Okay, my preference would always be a pitched roof rather than a flat roof. I'm sure lots of us would prefer the same, but we have to trust that Mark has done investigations into this and has made this recommendation. And I think we just need to get on with it as quickly as possible. As for plan B, yes, I spoke to my vicar today, and we're happy to allow the council to use the church. Of course, if the council wants some heating, we might have to ask for a bit of money. Is that all right?
Thank you, Councillor Caroline Corbyn.
Thank you. I was going to say the same as Jeremy about making sure that if they don't complete in time, to make sure that they do actually pay something back. And how quickly can you get them to start? Monday?
Thank you, Caroline. And now to an actual builder, Ricky.
I'm retired, Chairman, as you know.
Sorry, over to a retired builder.
I think the reality is, once you've got a leak in a flat roof, you can spend thousands and thousands of pounds trying to patch it up, trying to chase it for it to leak somewhere else. So I do support getting on and doing the work. The only thing I would like just to reassure myself and all of us that this is normally a specialist contractor who will do the new roof covering. It would have been good to have a comparative quote from a specialist contractor like Chalk Valley Roofing, for instance, just to see if we're within the ballpark with our in-house preferred contractor.
Thank you. Right, we've all had a go. Askell, you've had a go already, and I'm trying to speed this up. If you're very, very quick.
Just a technical question. So we cannot remove the contractor. We have to give them the job.
So we did a tendering process back in just over 3 years ago, and yes, we have a contractor.
So basically, they can give us any quotation, and we have to accept it, because this is another head herring. I mean, I think in the future we should be looking into, when we are putting contracts, there should be a clause where it says, if we want to, if we feel like we need to go and do another tender, they should accept, because they can charge us whatever they want because they got the contract, and which I find it rather bizarre. So in future reference, when we do take on contract, I think there should be a clause saying that some of the things we might have to look outside, like what Ricky just said, and Councillor Nettle, I think, is spot on. So just for the future.
Thank you. So,
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I don't disagree with what you've said at all, councillor. This is DNN working with a specialist company to provide a specialist product when, forgive me, time is against us. If we had a longer period, we may have been able to explore a number of other factors. However, we need to get on to protect this work. I absolutely agree that when it comes to the retendering of this particular contract, I would like to see the service specification written in a very different way, including the capping of fees, the clawback of finances. Those are things that are very important to me. What I will say is I commend the officers for bringing forward this piece of work within a very difficult time frame. And I hope that we will be able to finish this piece of work on time if councillors are minded to approve this evening.
Okay, so we have the proposal is to approve the urgent capital project using funds from or receipts from the sale of 47 Blue Ball Row. As I understand it, do I have a proposer? Jenny, do I have a seconder? Councillor Last, all those in favor? Thank you. Flooding of allotments report. Steve, welcome back. It's been so long.
Thank you, Chair. Just as a very brief introduction, I'd remind councillors that under financial regulations 9.1, the collection of all sums due to the council shall be the responsibility of and under the supervision of the RFO. So you've delegated authority to me to deal with all aspects of income, including requests for refunds, discounts, write-offs and things like that. So I would have been very happy to have dealt with the flooding of allotments under that delegated power without having to bother you this evening. So it's just worth bearing that in mind in future. If you want me to use that delegated authority, I'm quite happy to take all those decisions and be accountable for them. But also under Financial Regulation 1.9, it does say the RFO acts under the policy direction of the council. So you've got every right to call for any of the decisions you've delegated to me to come here. So that's what I think effectively you've done. However, it took quite a long period of time between an informal expectation that perhaps we would not invoice one allotment site to when we've been able to bring a report to you. So I think in future, if councillors would not want me to use my delegated authority, if you could let me know as soon as possible, we could have addressed this much earlier. So turning to the report, this report specifically is about allotment plots that have been flooded. I'll give you an update to this. I won't take you through all the paragraphs. I'm sure you've read it. And essentially, it's the fact that we've had some exceptional flooding this year, which we don't get most years. And in paragraph 4.1, we set out that all 40 plots of Cold Harbour Lane allotments were flooded to some extent. I also set out in paragraph 4.2 that I was aware when I wrote the report that there were 3 formal complaints received from allotment tenants on Fisherton A and C. Unfortunately, that isn't all the affected plots, and I was contacted by a member of the public, the partner of another allotment tenant on Butts allotment site, who says that they've also got a flooded plot. And you probably know way better than I do, because I've not even seen one of these allotment sites, you know, roughly how many plots are affected. And I really apologise, I haven't been able to give you a much better idea than the 43 that I've quoted in this report, but it's definitely more than 43. And I only mention that because I think whatever decision you take this evening should be a precedent for all of the plots affected during this last winter. So therefore, unfortunately, I can't quantify what that means in lost income, because I now realise that the figures quoted in this report are a little bit out of date. There might be another 6, there might be another 60, for all I know. Now, that doesn't change my recommendation to you, which we'll get to, but in paragraph 4.3, I think the essence of whether or not you want to grant a reduction, a discount, or waive the fee for the year comes down to risk. Whose risk is flooding? Is it the council's risk, in which case we should reimburse allotment tenants, or is it the risk of the allotment tenant when they enter into an agreement with us, in which case, you know, it's unfortunate, but that risk is borne by the allotment tenant, and therefore you don't need to give a reduction or a waiver. And I think the fact that we quote it in the upfront agreement that the tenant signs that some plots are susceptible to flooding, I think it's a risk that the allotment tenant should take on. And that's why my recommendation is to not grant a reduction. It also sets out in this report that I think we've only done some very initial work in terms of whether the allotments as a service breaks even. And even in that preliminary study, because we don't do full costing yet, but we're moving that way in this year, already it looks like the allotments run at a loss to the council. So general taxpayers are already subsidising the allotments anyway. Another reason why I don't think you should make that situation worse by giving reductions to allotment tenants. So that's my recommendation. I am only your RFO. It's your decision this evening. The two recommendations are to determine what, if any, reduction you want to give. If you are minded to give a reduction, I would urge you to give a full year's reduction rather than try and do something in between, because that just maximises the amount of admin and cost to implement that. For no gain whatsoever. So if you're minded to give a reduction, I would urge you to give a full year's reduction, but bear in mind that that should then be applied to any other plot holder who's also affected. And as I say, I'm sorry, I can't quantify that for you this evening. And in 7.2 recommendation is purely just to note, but because we're moving from closed down, going through budget monitoring and into budget setting for next year's budget, it's just to hopefully reassure you that we will need to do that break-even analysis to bring to you what the true costs of allotments are, and for you to bear that in mind when you set the fees and charges for next year, because at the very least, I think we should increase the rates in order to break even, but you might want to use it as an opportunity to also make a surplus to perhaps repay some money into the general reserve. Okay, happy to take questions.
Thanks, Steve. Questions? Tom?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Steve. I know Councillor Lynn Blackwood isn't here, but I know that for St Paul's, with all the flooding that took place there, that she was asking that the allotment holders effectively be allowed to have a year gratis because of the fact that the land was flooded. And they still, I know from speaking to allotment holders there recently, the land is still too boggy, nothing will grow. So everything they did try to do has rotted. It's just, the land is just suffering the ill effects still, even though we've had a relatively dry period. So I actually would support giving them that year without any payment, because quite frankly, they've not been able to grow anything. And for them, their allotment has bore no fruit. Also, Chair, we'll also look forward to the annual Allotment and Gardens Horticultural Show in August. And as Chair, or as Mayor, more importantly, you will get it in the ear from all of those who feel that the council could have done better.
Thank you, Chairman. Just want to touch the point 4.3. This actually is nobody's fault. It's not the councils or the people who owns the allotment. And on 6.2, if we were to give that reduction, are we saying £2,000?
So according to these figures, yes. But unfortunately, I'm not sure how many other plots are affected. So it might be double, it might be triple that. So I do apologise. I would ideally have been able to bring you exactly how many plots are affected. I don't think there's hundreds, but as I say, I'm no expert in this. That you might know from your contact with the allotment holders how many we're talking about.
I think Councillor Charleston and our chairman would know better because the effect had on the flooding previously. I personally think, people do look up to Salisbury City Council. We made a tremendous loss and we are making, and £2,000 I don't think is going to be a huge thing. Instead of the negative PR, I'd rather support that, give them the discount of 50% or something and explain them nicely that this is nobody's fault, but this is a business in a sense, and have a reduction cost. I would support that. Thank you.
Councillor Rill.
I have every sympathy for the allotment holders and for all our farmers who've had problems with their crops this year, and indeed with myself, having had my own garden underwater for about 3 months. But we can't possibly say how much flooding is going to occur in the future. By all accounts, even with our River Park work, there will be, you know, an increased likelihood of flooding with the way that the climate is changing. If we do this once, then in principle, we're committing ourselves to it in perpetuity. And I don't think that that's wise. I think it's a shame, but lots of things in life are a shame. And I just don't think this is something that we should effectively be committing ourselves to that's going to cost us money for years to come.
I'm inclined to agree with Tom Corbyn on this one. I think there's been exceptional circumstances this year. They've had all the disturbances due to the river park. And I think, you know, if you sell a product, regardless of what the contract is, if you sell a product and it doesn't work, then there's an obligation for you to compensate that client. And clearly here, they can't grow anything there. They can't use that allotment, or so I understand. And I think as a good will gesture, we should at the very least say we won't charge them for this year. You know, I would personally limit it to Cold Harbour Lane. I know that might cause a few issues with Butts Lane, but let's be honest. You know, we as a council and we as residents of Salisbury have received a lot of money from the River Park in terms of the money they're spending on the gravel track going up there. We've done very well out of this as a city council. We've had that whole track well, I don't know if it's been finished or started actually, but they're going to redo it all, new drainage, new everything, tarmac. We have gained a lot from that, and it's probably worth £250,000 to £500,000. I think for us to then turn around after we've gained so much to say to the allotment holders, okay, it's in the contract, you've got to pay for this, even though you can't use it. I just don't think it's a very good gesture from the council to do. Yeah, you can make it pretty specific that it is a one-off, you know, but then if it is flooding every year, if they are flooding every year, then I suspect the allotment holders won't want the allotment down there because they won't be able to use it.
Yeah, I'm broadly supportive of this. I agree with what Steve said about looking at the contract because it does need to be a one-off. Fortunately, we can't control the weather. We can't control the climate. It is changing. And has anybody looked to see if they can actually insure their allotment against these things? I don't know. But obviously for this, definitely for the ones that have been affected by the River Park and the flooding that happened there. But we do need to look at it, but maybe we do need to look at the actual contract they sign and find out if they can get insurance to prevent against loss.
So Herbert.
Thank you. I sympathise a lot with the allotment holders, and I don't mean to sound like big bad Tory here, but I just don't think in this case this is something we should be paying some sort of compensation or refund for. I'm concerned about the sort of precedents this will set moving forward. If something was to happen somewhere else, people might see it as unfair that they haven't got any compensation in return. And it almost looks a bit like we're accepting liability for what is essentially a force majeure. I mean, if you look at maps from 1884, it does record that areas are floodplains. So it's not like this wasn't known. If it was a case of the tenants quitting the land as a result of the detriment to the land and wanting a refund of fees already paid, that's a different matter. And secondly, I think this is going to be quite bad optics if we do, as the paper alludes to, look to increase the allotment fees in the future. To increase an allotment fee, you have to give a 1 year notice. So if we want that in the budget for next year, we'd have to serve a notice pretty sharpish. And I think it's going to look really pants for us if we say, yeah, you can have a refund, but we're going to pop it up next year. So I'm just concerned about those two factors there.
Thank you, Chair. I do take on board all the other councillors, all the other points that have been made by all other councillors. The idea of setting a precedent, which would not be ideal. But as I'm sure we all saw, hopefully we all saw the drone pictures, the footage from of the allotments after the floods in January. I think it's very fair and clear to me that had the allotments not been there, they bore the brunt of a lot of that flooding, and I think we would have seen a lot more houses flooded if they hadn't been there. This is exceptional circumstances. This is a sort of increasingly frequent, once every 10, 5, however many years. But it was an extraordinary event. I think in this case, I will be supporting a reduction. Yeah.
Thanks. I mean, this is a floodplain, and I think that if you tried to get insurance, the insurers would put it so high that it's not, it'd be far more than the cost of this allotment. I do appreciate the allotments actually do have bring value into the city, provides physical as well as mental escape for many people. And so, but I think that once we start offering a reduction or compensation on this, excuse the pun, but we are opening the floodgates. And one thing we definitely know about climate change is suddenly ain't going to change for the better. So I think this is going to be an acceptable thing. So as a council, I think you're actually saying if you sign up to this, we're going to give you a refund every year, or even every other year. And that worries me because, well, you've just said what our financial position is. And I know it's a small amount, and I know the allotment people do a great amount of work, and I'm not decrying what they do. I'm just saying that we need to be very careful on the decision we make tonight.
Thank you. I live quite close to the allotments that are flooded, and each year they flood a bit, and then all the water goes down. But actually, this year has been exceptionally bad, and I don't see how we can ask them to pay anything if they can't dig their allotments. To be honest with you, but so I would like to support the recommendation that we give them a reduction.
I completely agree that it's very unfair and that people who've had this flooding, potentially deserve a reduction. But I'm just, again, shocked at the fact that it feels like people are not getting that we have £470,000 that we need to find in the next year. And I think doling out money like this is not the way to do that. I think we have to take this seriously, and I think that it's unfair on them, but it's going to be unfair on the whole city if we have to put the precept up, if we have to cut services. So I just think that spending like this at this point in time is just indicative of the whole problem.
Councillor Dollar.
Chair, thank you. Are we talking every allotment for a reduction for a year, or are we talking just Cold Harbour Lane? So just Cold Harbour Lane. So the report, Steve, you say it's roughly 40 plots, but it could be a little bit more either way. I'm actually content, I think, with what was proposed, which councillors have been talking to. So the loss, if you like, is peanuts, I think, absolute peanuts for a year. However, I think, the flood works taking place probably will, I'm hoping, will stop any future flooding. That's what I'd like to be assured of. It may not, but it did around Harlem. That's how I'm looking at it. When the works were done there 20 plus years ago, we've not had the flooding that we used to get. That's one point. And the other point is potentially, I suppose, to all those people that have signed to an allotment, I guess there's a contract, and any future people who sign up, is just to alert them that if it does flood, then, unfortunate as it is, but that's where it lies. We may not be able to use the plot, but I'm happy for the 40 or so. It's not the disastrous figures that some members have been alluding to.
So yeah, just the discussion sort of mooted around the flooding, and as Councillor Dalton just alluded, I agree. My impression of the flood defence work that will help protect Cold Harbour Lane, certainly from the comments we had previously in relation to those that period of flooding, was that had the works been completed, that area would have been protected. And so presumably the allotments there should be safe for the future and they should not flood. So on that point, I'm quite happy to propose that we allow those tenants a year's grace at Cold Harbour Lane allotments only as a one-off.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Sam Ch-
Chair, apologies. Can you use your mic? Because if there's anybody
Sorry.
online, they don't catch.
Yeah, apologies. So we have a proposal that we give a year's grace for the allotment holders at Cold Harbour Lane, proposed by councillor Tom Corbyn, seconded by Sam Charleston. All those in favour?
Geez, Chair, we've asked for a recorded.
Sorry.
So
In that case, we've been asked for a recorded vote. So if you can put your hands up and hold them there until Tom has said good to go. Okay. All those against? Abstentions? Okay, can you read the numbers out for us, Tom, please?
Okay, so the numbers are 13 for 4, 7 for against, and 2 abstentions.
Okay, so the motion is carried. Thank you very much. Thanks, Steve.
Can I just check, the wording you read out there was Cold Harbour Lane? You didn't use the word only, but I'm assuming it is just the tenants affected with flooding on Cold Harbour Lane. But there are at least 3 others and one that phoned me up. So do you want us to apply this to all flooded ones or purely to Cold Harbour? Because we're going to get asked for it.
So we've just voted on Cold Harbour Lane only, so that's where we are. Okay, thank. Item 20, fees and charges to changes to grazing plot tenancy fees. Tom, this is yours, I believe.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to bring a report that introduces the proposed charging structure for our grazing plots for consideration and approval. Apologies, due to changes in staff, this was not brought back in January when the fees and charges for garden markets and the crematorium and everything else was discussed. We currently own 11 grazing plots around the city, with 3 at Fisherton Farm and 2 at Stratford. Some are also now being turned into our nature reserves as well. The last time the fees were agreed and reviewed was in March 22 by the Land Working and Property Group, whereby it was agreed to increase all grazing plots rental fees by 3% in line with the RPI and CPI inflation costs at that time. What we are now proposing is in line with the Office for National Statistics and with the CPI rate for the period of when the report was published last week. Inflation was running at 2.3%, whilst on average RPI inflation was running at 3.3%. This proposal suggests an increase of 50% of the inflationary rates, and the proposal is to uplift the fees by 2.8%.
Given that the motion that went through previously on that we were just discussing, do these tenants get a rebate if there's flooding?
Tom? I suspect not. But...
There's no clause in the agreement to cover that at the moment.
Okay, there being no other questions, do I have a proposer? Councillor Hott and a seconder. Councillor Caroline Corbyn. Sorry, Tom, she beat you to it. Okay, we have a motion to increase the fees by 2.8%, proposed by Tom Corbyn, proposed by Attica Hott, seconded by Caroline. All those in favour? Carried. Right, the fun part of the evening. Motions. Councillor King. To consider a motion from the chairman of the Marketplace Stage Task Group, Councillor Joe King, originally given to the Events, Markets and Grants Committee, and which was referred on the 30th of May 2024 to be discussed at the next meeting of the full council. Councillor King, I would ask you to read out your motion as a proposer, find a seconder, then we'll open it to debate.
I'd like to just give a little bit of background, and I promise you, Chair, I'll be quick because I'll speak really fast. So the vision for this, I'm sorry if I'm like a crap record to some of you, but the vision for the city stage is an opportunity to showcase our local talent. That's school productions, creative people and groups, bands of all kinds, choral groups, choirs, comedians, storytellers, whatever really. So in June 2022, I put a motion to this council saying that Salisbury City, and it was unanimously agreed, Salisbury City Council believes that a permanent stage should be erected in the market, Guildhall Square, and therefore agree to form a working group consisting of those members of Salisbury City Council interested and invite others to join. The working group will agree terms of reference and report back to the full council regularly. In September 2022, we had a public meeting, and those present were from some of the schools, bands, production, techie people, and people who'd had experience of putting on events across the city. We agreed that the best way forward would be to put up a temporary stage for 6 weeks to trial it, to see if the city was ready for a permanent stage. The City Task Group consisted of councillors, representatives from local PA companies and local musicians. Regular updates have been given to the full council, the last in January 2024, when the project was unanimously supported. So where we are now, the task group looked at the size and position of the stage, security, bookings. The local company offered a stage for 6 weeks at a considerably reduced charge. There is still an energy, I believe, for this across the city. And I think this project would run really well alongside the other venues and activities in the city. City Hall, Playhouse, the Arts Centre, Salisbury Live events, and all the gigs that take place in the pubs. At the Events, Marketing and Markets and Grant Committee, the proposal I put forward there was agreed unanimously too. I would like this to be a city council project where we're all working together to achieve something amazing for our city. You've seen the motion. I won't read it out because you've probably all read it and are all in agreement with it. So all those in favour, now I'll stop there. Sorry.
Okay, so we have the motion on the table. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bolwell. Questions? Councillor Riddle.
Whilst I'm very sympathetic with the aim of this proposal, we don't really know what it's going to cost us in terms of staff time and commitment. It's not just really, is it just a question of checking documentation? There's all sorts of work connected with the electrics in the Guildhall Square, all sorts of things. What we did say as an administration, I believe, is that we would like to see some figures put on this proposal before we could, some costings put on this proposal before we could agree to take it any further. But I haven't seen any figures. I don't know whether there are any, but I don't think, especially in view of our current situation, a blanket assurance that there will be no cost to SCC is really quite enough. I do think we need some figures. And I'm sorry if that disappoints Councillor King, because I do support the idea, but it's a bit of an unknown quantity financially.
Thank you. I mean, in fairness to Councillor King, all she's asking for is officer time.
Thank you. I was just going to say I'm supportive of having events in the square.
Sorry, could you speak up? I can't quite.
Oh, sorry. I'm supportive of having events in the square, but as it says about the finances for this project to be handled by the responsible finance officer, Steve, have you already been asked and have you got any idea? No. Okay, thank you.
If I may, just point of information, there is precedent for us holding funds on behalf of other organisations. Earlier today, we discussed the Lower Bemerton Trust. So SCC can hold funds. I think there is a clear distinction between SCC being asked to raise funds or contribute funds, which my reading of the motion is that isn't the case. But there is an ask for us to hold funds on behalf in the same way that perhaps we could do for the Mayor's charity.
Sorry to come back. So if it's just holding the funds in the same way as the thing, and then assumably the markets team would oversee making sure all the paperwork, like the public liability and all of that, was in place for the people using the stage. Is that correct?
Yes, we could do that in the same way that we do for any hirer or user of our facilities.
So again, just to step in a second. So Councillor King, Joe, when we have people that will come along and say they want to use and hire the stage, are you saying that whoever is organising this on our behalf will have to check PLI and that sort of stuff, or will that be part of the City Council's officers' responsibility?
It would be good if we used all the City Council paperwork for any hiring.
Thank you, Chair. Again, Joe, I think we are all very supportive of this, but I think, again, what the administration has asked for a number of times is, what is it going to cost? I appreciate it's officer time, but as has been made very clear this evening, we have a big old hole, and I'm just very, very nervous about signing off something. I would like to propose an amendment, which is that the City Council is supportive as long as we do see a fully costed budget. Like, as you say, you're asking for officers to look after the booking of it as well. And I'm very nervous about, I haven't actually seen any paperwork that supports this. And I can't support it as it stands, I'm afraid. And Chair, I'm going to have to give my apologies now and go back to childcare.
Yeah, whilst everybody's saying the same here. Whilst I have some.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Whilst I like the idea, and I have asked this previously on every occasion that it's been raised, I have concerns about whether it would get plan permission. Whether it would get planning permission. Okay, so we've just had an issue with something else in the Market Square that has been removed without planning permission. And I've always believed that councils have to act in best practice. We need to know whether this needs planning permission or whether it would get planning permission, because I am wary of us being seen to support something that doesn't meet planning rules. And that is what I've asked every time this has come up and been presented before us. Always mention planning, because I know how difficult it is to put anything on the Market Square because of planning. And to me, it's a fundamental question. If the planning and conservation officers are happy with this, and I think they view it as a permanent stage and not a temporary stage, but I could be wrong. If they're happy with this, then it changes my view a lot. But if they're not happy with this, I can't support it. And I've raised this every time we've had this debate.
Councillor Rimmer.
Councillor Thomas has stolen the words right out of my mouth.
Councillor Rimmer.
Oh, I thought you said Councillor Riddle, sorry.
No, sorry.
I think my concern is also about cost, because what we're being asked to vote for is a trial. However, it makes me slightly nervous that even in the trial period, it needs to be financed by donations, which doesn't necessarily encourage that it's likely to have long-term viability. Also, as a professional musician, I suppose my other question is about quality control in terms of what we have on the stage, because a lot of, we want to be a city that tourists come to. I know a lot of other tourist cities, for example, York, where I used to live, they actually have the councils to give permission to buskers whether they can perform or not. Someone has to go and listen to them and decide whether they have a sufficient quality. And I suppose that's one question, is where the quality control comes in. And the other one is the issue of PRS and who would be in charge of paying that. Would it be paid by the council itself? Would it be paid by the performers? That's my question.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Councillor Joe has gone to a long distance and length to find out all this. And I think in previous time, if I can remember, she always involved all the councillors and got the support, and she is where she is now. However, I think if the council is not going to be charged or any officer time, if we can break down the officer time, I think a lot of the council are sympathetic for this to happen. But it is very unclear as how much officer time is going to cost. If it costs a lot of money, and I think I'm wary if the officer were to take on the collecting the money side, that will be a problematic. And I think we really should exclude that firsthand and just find out what the officer's charge is and maybe bring that to on the future time when we know the appropriate amount. That way, I think a lot of people will be comfortable, because everybody likes the idea and something that you have done, and I applaud you for your hard work.
Well, my concern was also about planning and the view of the conservation officer. It would be very helpful to us if Councillor King or one of her group could have some preliminary discussions with the officers at Wiltshire to let us know what their view would be before we know whether there's any sense at all in taking this any further.
Councillor Hock has sort of really made the point I wanted to make, which was, Joe, you've worked on this for so long, and I think it is very disappointing that we're still here having this debate, and people who in the past have said they've in theory supported it are now sort of getting cold feet for obvious reasons. And I would even argue that maybe I'm in that category too. I think it's an unfortunate time because obviously we don't have a business and events manager in post at the moment. And I think we are getting one in the next month or so. So that will be good. So it's almost like that there's a few more pieces of the jigsaw that need to be put in place before we can move forward with this. So I think for that reason, and also the financial issues that the council finds itself in at the moment, I'm not entirely sure that tonight is the right night to take this forward. But as I say, I think you've worked really hard on this over the last 3.5 years. So all credit to you, Joe.
Chair, thank you. Interesting listening to members on this motion. I remember when it first came here, I think the council threw its weight behind the proposal. But what I see here, that there's no sort of substance behind it, and the planning within a conservation area concerns me, actually. I don't see anything within this that advice has been sought and planning application isn't necessary. It doesn't say that here. And the nodding of a no from the finance officer also concerns me. And I think on those two, well, there's a few other reasons. The location of the temporary stage, I'm not sure where that would be. Would it impact on the market? And obviously we've got the Charter Fair in October. I know it may not be there in October because it has 6 weeks between now and May next year. But planning, the finance, And I suppose location, which isn't there, is less of an impact, but does it have an impact on some of the markets and fairs, etc.? But planning is a serious one. I don't think we could be seen to authorise something on our market square which shouldn't be there. It'd be rather embarrassing, wouldn't it, if we've chased somebody off the market square who didn't have planning permission for us to then go and put a stage there that does need planning permission.
We've got new points to add, and then we'll just going to reiterate what we want.
I think I was going to move for deferral actually until we've got a business case to support this, because I have several questions about it, Chair. I agree that there is insufficient information, because there's a whole thing about should this coincide with whether it's fair on the square or Christmas on the square. One of the concerns I had is that when the stage is up there, is damage to it and social behaviour, that sort of thing. Who's going to, who's responsible for that? Given that we don't have any security team at the moment. I mean, there's a whole load. I know that when we put these events on, like Fair on the Square and Christmas, there's a cost to insurance of all that, and I think there is some work that needs to happen here, that we do need to look into this a bit more. So I would recommend not voting this tonight, going for what Councillor Victoria Charleston proposed before she had to leave. I think she was going for a deferral or more information before we make a decision on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Charleston.
Well, yeah, this perhaps is superseded by Councillor Nettle, but yes, I was probably going to say much the same. Either we defer or we amend to say see some costs, make sure we can get planning permission and bring it back, possibly to F&G. I think the next meeting of F&G is soon, possibly.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I can't hear what you're saying.
I'm just saying I was probably going to say much the same as Jeremy was saying. I think what Victoria was going to propose was we either to defer or to suggest that we need an understanding of whether we can get planning permission or and a understanding of the costs involved, and perhaps to bring it back to the next meeting of F&G, which I believe is soon, next month, I think.
Over to the CEO for a second.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Could I make a proposal, not on the motion itself, but I appreciate there is strong feeling amongst some members of the administration that this is an external event, this is an external project, and therefore it needs to be undertaken not by members, not by officers within this council. And that is a strong held belief by some members. Could I suggest, therefore, that as part of the opposition budget setting process, it is entirely appropriate for officers to assist and work up any number of projects as part of that budget setting process. One of those projects could include the setting of a temporary stage pilot. In that way, you could defer this evening's motion and officers could legitimately spend time working up this particular proposal. Just an opportunity, a thought to put out there.
Tom. So I've got huge sympathy for Councillor King. She has worked incredibly hard in the background to bring this to us. She's obviously deeply frustrated at the way in which council works and has been defeated by the fact that she brought this up at the whatever the meeting was that we held at Bentley's neighbourhood centre, and her item didn't make the agenda. That was not her fault. I think everyone in this room kind of got the idea that where we wanted to be was to be doing this during the summer, not kicking something down into the autumn or winter or next year. So the urgency was actually weeks ago that we wanted this to take place. In fact, months ago, in reality, in terms of giving
You could
permission.
say even years.
Even years. So I think we do have, I mean, part of the frustration, I must be for Councillor King, is also waiting to answer some of the questions that members have been putting. So a lot of those questions have been about costs, but I think Councillor King was always quite clear that it was minimal costs. I don't think she was expecting the council to organise who is performing. So I don't turn pages, something like. So the point was that they would be managing themselves. Have I got that right? Or that perhaps Councillor King's involvement or whoever was with the stage owners would be at least having the liability of the stage. It's not a council liability. The stage would be placed there and it would be very much at risk knowing how the market square is used by people. The current public liability insurance that we have is probably quite adequate in its current form. But we always, as a council, encourage others to have their own public liability, even if they don't, and then effectively they sign a waiver. I personally think that we could get away with a minor amendment. Just bear in mind, members, that although we manage the Market Square and Guildhall Square as Salisbury City Council, it's still Wiltshire Council that owns the land at the end of the day. And I think from a planning perspective, it's quite straightforward for us to have an amendment to just seek Wiltshire Council approval through the planning process. And I think they'd probably give it a nod. And if they said only 4 weeks instead of 6 weeks, then we just have to react to that. So I don't personally see the planning issue as being too burdensome. If it was to be the killer and stops it, at least by having it included as an amendment, members can be satisfied that at least we've tried the process and we've given that opportunity to take place. So I guess really the questions I'm asking Councillor King are just to confirm that the stage in its place will be managed not by the council, and at the stage any damage will not be the liability of the council. And just from a planning permission perspective, that we can have that as an amendment, and if we can, I'm quite happy to have that proposed by me.
Okay, so look, we've been around the houses with this. Personally, as a group of councillors, we all unanimously supported this when it came forward all those ages ago. And yet here we are, it's a simple request, put a bit of a stage up as a trial happens and go from there. And yet we've gone around the table tonight and we've found every single possible reason why we can't do it. And I reckon that is really disappointing. Our risk aversion is spectacular. Oh my God, what happens if someone damages it? Oh my God, what happens if we have got a proposal which the City Council have to support with a little bit of admin and nothing else. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to hire bands. They don't have to do anything. They just have to supply a little bit of admin effort and look after the money. So over to Councillor King. I still think this has mileage and I still want it to go forward. Could I ask that you defer this until we've ironed out some of this stuff? I cannot believe we're talking about getting planning permission for something in the last 6 weeks. Out there on the fair on the square, every summer, every Christmas, we have an event on. We don't get planning permission for that. We just put it up. So why have we got to a point all of a sudden where Councillor King has got, oh my gosh, planning permission, we might have to get that. We have to apply for it first to see if we'll get it. Utterly ridiculous. So, Joe, can I ask?
Can I answer some of the questions, please? The cost, which I've spoken about several times, will be £12,000, which covers the cost of the hire of the stage, plus somebody to organise the acts during the 6 weeks. Planning permission, I understand, is not needed. I've inquired and I understand it's not needed. professional musicians. There are loads, Ed, right across the city. They might not be playing or performing in the cathedral, but there are bands, there are soloists, there are choirs, there are masses and masses of musicians across the city who are amazing. And part of this was in the schools where we have amazing productions going on, which the mums and dads and grandparents go and see, and nobody else does. Just imagine showcasing that. The schools, when we had our open meeting, were very excited about the prospect of putting on their shows, actually bang in the centre. And think how many people would come into the centre. I think how well the pubs and the cafes would do. We would become a city that was known as a city of culture and creativity. And this proposal is asking for this 6-week stage to be put up in the next year. So there's time to look at these things. There's time to talk with the officers. There's time for all those things to happen that you're all worried about. That actually, I don't remember any of you being worried about them before.
Okay, Councillor King. Two options. We can withdraw the motion because no one seconded it yet. And then we can try and work through some of this stuff and bring it back to the next meeting. If we put this motion to the vote and it fails, the project is dead in the water. It's Jeremy, it's dead. There isn't an appetite around the table to see it through. So, Joe, it's a difficult one, but your call. What do you want to do?
Somebody said earlier about deferring it.
That's what I'm saying.
Is that what you're
Withdraw,
suggesting?
we can bring it back at a later date.
Okay, I'd like to go for that option.
Okay, motion withdrawn. Thank you.
So wanted to ask a supplementary question.
But could I just say how disappointed I am?
I would concur. That is really disappointing. Right. Item 22, motion. Councillor Riddle, over to you.
Well, I hope this motion is pretty self-explanatory. Hope everybody's read it. This is just a question of asking. I have written to Wiltshire Council's leader and to our MP and to the bid, asking whether there is any possibility of any kind of compensation for businesses that can show proof of reduced takings as a result of the Fishton Street works. I have spoken to traders along there who have suffered badly, and I'm sure some of you might already be aware, I have mentioned it elsewhere, that on one occasion the independent bookshop took £6 in one day, and that was their sole takings for the day. And John Glenn agreed with me that was just, unsustainable. But he, unfortunately, although he visited them and expressed sympathy, he wasn't able to actually come up with any practical solution. And I guess it's not really his province, but it's got to be somebody's province. And I think that in view of what we were able to do for businesses hit by other problems which were not their fault, like the Novichok, and the fact that this project has now overrun by, I think, about 6 months. It seems to me that it would be very supportive of this council to local businesses to request to Wiltshire and other bodies that may have been giving funding for this project. There must surely be some kind of provision for unforeseen circumstances in the financing of this, a contingency. And so I would hope that people would support making this request in support of our local businesses who have had a horrendous time. And it's not going to get any better, is it, with the Station Forecourt work having a knock-on effect now as well? It's not the fault, strictly speaking, I suppose, of those who organised this scheme. But given the way projects are run these days, you could have expected an overrun. and could have expected that people would lose a lot of money. So I think it's worth an ask, that's all. It's not a political thing, I just think it's worth an ask.
Thank you. Very interesting and very important as well. But Annie, I'd like to ask, what sort of support, let's say if they were to come back, I mean, what sort of support or compensation are you referring to?
Well, I think it would be, as it was with previous emergencies, I think it would be a question of businesses approaching Wiltshire Council with evidence of how their takings have been impacted. And it would then be up to bid and Wiltshire Council to represent them and to work with them and to see what they could do.
That still doesn't answer my question. I mean, what sort of what sort of compensation? I mean, it's like if I were to put down, I would say, look, because of this issue, I think Wiltshire Council should reduce their business rate for 50% or something like that. Yeah, at least you've got tangible something to ask.
Yes.
But I'm just asking what sort of compensation.
Well, I did originally ask about business rates. I wrote to Councillor Cluer about that, but unfortunately I didn't get a reply. So I'm not quite sure what kind of offer, if any, Wiltshire Council might be prepared to make. I don't want to tie their hands. This is meant to be something that's undertaken in all goodwill. And when I spoke to the bid about it, their response was to come up with some other ideas about where people could park their cars and things like that. It wasn't an advertising, saying the businesses are open. Well, it's clearly not working, judging by the circumstances that some of those businesses find themselves in at the moment. I mean, for a shop to take £6 in a day in a city centre location is absolutely
Councillor Hill.
dreadful. Thank you. I can't support this. I'm sorry. In the nicest possible way, I find this motion sort of quite contradictory and a bit juxtaposing in a way. We're talking, the wording is there. You're asking for a compensation scheme because of an improvement works. I find compensation improvement, we're delivering something for these people that in the long term will hopefully be an improvement, as you said there. I don't quite know how we would quantify or prove that it would be that the loss of income is directly as a result. Maybe it's 50% dip, whatever. There's too much of it's too open-ended. And this last bit about future major projects in the city, I just think, again, we're opening ourselves up to too many doors here. I'm sorry.
Can I just come back on that?
Hang on a second. Let's go through the rest of rest of our names. First of all, please. Councillor McGrath.
Thanks, Chair. I can't support this. I think it's a really badly drafted motion. It's not, you can't compare the Fisherton Street, well, as Councillor Hibbert's alluded to, you can't compare this to Novichok or COVID, which were completely unexpected events. They were unexpected events that hit our city and, where compensation was clearly needed. Absolutely, I have every sympathy with the businesses along Fisherton Street who have struggled, but as we've already established, the improvements will hopefully increase footfall. And we have seen a broader increase in footfall across Salisbury, something like 8% it was last year. Obviously, that was mainly before the works had started on Fisherton Street. So I just can't support this. Again, this is an example of SCC overstepping its mark. This is a Wiltshire Council issue, and I'm sure that Trowbridge, Trowbridge can handle their own budgets as we've seen tonight. SCC can't.
Councillor Caroline Corbyn.
Thank you. I think we all need to clean our spectacles off, because actually all that Councillor Riddle is asking is that the council shares the frustration of the businesses. I think we do all share the frustrations of the businesses, and to actually request that Wiltshire Council and other relevant funding authorities work together. So all she's asking is that we ask that council and other funding authorities to look at it and see if they can be compensated. So I don't have a problem. I'd like to second it.
Yes. All I wanted to say was I have specifically said businesses that can show proof of reduced takings. Now, they've all got books. They've all got books recording what they took 2 years ago and what they took 2 weeks ago. So it shouldn't be beyond the wit of man for the authorities to devise a scheme.
I would disagree because, you know, if you take 100 quid less a month, how much of that was directly attributed to this scheme as opposed to general trends, general other external causes? I think it's quite hard to quantify.
Okay, right here. The only question I have for you, Councillor Riddle, is relevant funding authority. Does that include the City Council?
No, I'm talking about the authorities that are funding the major projects. So it's just a question of if there was, for example, government money coming to Wiltshire, an allocation of government money to do such major projects, that it be included in the financing.
Okay, we have a motion. It's been seconded.
Chairman, very quickly.
We're going to the vote. Atticle, you've had a go already. Thank you. Atticle, you've had a stab already. We are not going backwards and forwards around the houses. Okay, we have a motion. We have a motion on the table. It has been proposed and seconded. We are going to the vote. All those in favour? Two, three, four, five, six, seven. Tom? All those against? 1, 2, 3. Any abstentions? 1, 2, 3. Motion is carried. Item 23, motion, Councillor Rogers.
Chairman, due to the time and the fact that I don't think we make good decisions at this time of night, and I've got a slideshow lasting 10, 15 minutes, I'd be happy to defer this motion to the next full council, if my seconder will accept.
I'm happy with that. Would it be better to bring your motion to the Environment and Climate Committee, though, Ricky, rather than full
If that's more relevant and before the next full council, I'm happy to do.
That's where the work carries on. John?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I've spoken to Mark about it, and I think the issue that would be raised in both the motions that Jenny and Ricky have put forward are a matter of resolving the issues that are connected within the existing policies and the existing plan. And I think it would be better to discuss it thoroughly at the Environmental Services meeting. I think Mark's quite happy for us to do so.
Yeah. Thank you. In that case, Councillor Roger, you withdrawing your motion and I'll bring it back to Environment and Climate?
Yes, Chairman, the weeds won't go away. They'll still be there.
Thank you. Councillor Stanway?
Hello, I am here. And I came here this evening with a little story about resilience.
Sorry, we're talking about motions here. Is this relevant to the motion?
Sorry?
We're talking about motions here.
Yes.
Is this relevant? Is this relevant to Councillor Rogers' motion?
It's relevant in that I was representing the allotments here and I didn't.
Okay. Unfortunately, we're past that now.
So yeah, it doesn't feel right that yeah, there's no money put against the this one. Against this one, yes, against that motion to.
Hang on, well, I'm sorry, I've lost you. What are we talking about here?
Is it the one about the rates? Yes. Yes, the compensation for the allotment holders.
We've done that, and it's
No, you have.
yeah, and we've got several items still on the agenda. We need to get through this.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you, Councillor Rogers. Councillor Bolwell, what the question's going to be asked of you?
Guess what my answer is, Chair?
Thank you very much. You're a star.
I'm happy to defer it along with Councillor Rogers, and we'll take it to Environment on Monday.
Okay, thank you very much. Much appreciated. Item 25, markets updates. We are done. Item 26, flag flying and Guildhall external lighting policy. Oh, this is another Luke.
I'm happy to take this one, Councillor.
Clark, take this.
Thank you very much. Councillors, you have a report in front of you. I'm not going to go through it at any great depth. It is for agreement or otherwise amendment, etc. Happy to take any questions if there are any.
Councillor King.
I think as this is a policy that you've put before us, Asa, that we ought to go along with the government in the policy and the list of flag flying occasions which they recommend, which excludes some of the ones that we've already got on our list, because actually in the policy it does say that so if we had those standard ones in the policy and then other ones could be added as for your discretion, that's what the policy says. So I read, sorry, I'm not very coherent, I'm struggling a bit. So that was what I would like to amend this policy to say. I've got a list, and you've probably got a list too, of the flag flying occasions which the government recommend, so I would like to make that amendment to this proposal. Sorry, I'll find it.
Councillor, not a problem. Just for clarification, so the list that we have at under, unfortunately, numbered 1.2, which should have actually read 4.2, that is a list of dates which have been approved by the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, along with a number of dates which have been approved by this full council. So again, if there were inclusions of other dates, it could be by full council recommendation.
I understand that, but what I was saying was that I thought that the policy, as this is a policy, not just a recommendation, it's a policy that we're agreeing here, ought to just include the designated days for flying the Union flag in the UK, and then we could add the other ones that we wanted.
And apologies, Councillor, not wanting to labour the point. What I have here is a list which is which the sources of that information have come from two places. The first is from the Department of Culture, Media and Sport. The second are for days which have been approved by this full council. If I'm understanding correctly, what you're suggesting is that we remove all of those days that were previously moved by full council. Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
So for the flying of flags, not within the effective diary, will just be agreed by the CEO as opposed to, say, CEO and discussion with leaders. I just question whether perhaps that should be amended to such.
Happy to take that amendment, Councillor. De facto, that would be the conversation that happens, that it would be in liaison, but ultimately it would be your chief executive that would make the decision.
In that case, I would like to propose that amendment, that it is for all other flag flying with CEO in discussion with the leaders of the council.
Councillor King has an amendment to say go with the DCMS recommendations only. Do you have a seconder?
Probably not. So I'll withdraw.
Joy. Tom, you are proposing?
I'm proposing that we're under where it says 1.1, but actually it's 4.1. So it says any further dates for the flying of flags will be agreed by the CEO in advance of any relevant dates. And I just want that to be amended with discussion with the administration leaders or leaders is probably.
Do you have a seconder for that, Jenny? Okay, are you happy with that amendment? And we can turn that
with group administration needs.
Okay, we have a motion proposed, seconded. All those in favour? Carry. Last but not least, amendment to bank mandate relating to the Lower Bemerton Recreation Ground Trust. Steve.
Thank you again, Chair and Councillors. So as mentioned earlier, if you were here for the Lower Bemerton Trust AGM, I mentioned at that we had a problem last year, and that's set out in this report about the bank mandate. So in paragraph 3.1, unfortunately, that is still our live bank mandate. We thought we changed it to those councillors listed in 3.2, but unfortunately the bank hadn't implemented that. So we've still got an out-of-date bank mandate where I think only one of those councillors listed in 3.1 is still a councillor here, and we need at least two. So one of my recommendations procedurally is to ask you to approve the change of authorised signatories as set out in paragraph 3.2, which was your original intention when you did try and implement a new bank mandate, or you could take this opportunity to change those named councillors. That's the first recommendation. And the second one is as set out in paragraph 3.5. I had real problems trying to get any sense out of the bank at all, not being an authorised signatory. So I've asked in recommendation 4.2 if you could approve the inclusion of myself and Mark Reed, because at some point I might hand over this duty to Mark and he's happy to take it on. But you make us authorised signatories, but we would not be trustees like yourselves are on the trust. We would purely be administrative authorised signatories just to handle the everyday admin.
Caroline.
Thank you. Can we not do what we did? We did it with something else, didn't we? Where we did it with the role rather than the person, so that then it wasn't, so that it could go over to the next person in that role rather than actually identifying it by name. And I can't remember what we did that with. We discussed it with over something and I can't remember what that was. But otherwise I'm kind of supportive, so I'm happy with that.
Just to clarify, the bank won't act on anything unless it's got a name against it and a resolution from the council that names these people. That's why I've specified Steve and Mark in here. It's only because the bank requires that. So it would be much more common sense to have a title, but they require a name and a signature with that name.
I think it's a very sensible suggestion and I'd like to propose it if that's okay.
Any more for any more? Ricky.
I think we've got to get on with this and let the delegation go to our officers. Jeremy, Jenny and I might not be here next May anyway, so that may all change again. So let's at least enable the council to get its hand on the money that it rightly needs to carry out the maintenance.
Okay, so we have a recommendation. Caroline proposing. Ricky second. All those in favour? Sorry.
Apologies, Councillor, just before we vote, point of information. Steve, what were to happen in the unlikely event that Councillors Corbyn, Hock and Nettle were not returned next May?
We'd have to propose another bank mandate change, but that's just the way the bank operates.
And apologies for my own stupidity on this one. Is it helpful to have more than three to offset any chance of those three councillors losing their seats? Or is it negligible, in which case we just carry on with the three and cross our fingers?
Yeah, five would be better, but I don't know if you can get enough interest of 5 councillors.
No, that is true. You can.
I'm just playing the odds.
And so then in that case, one other point of information. Sorry. So if the 3 signatories do not get re-elected or choose not to be elected, will they remain signatories until such point as someone else can be found?
They would, but I would suggest that the council would prevent them from exercising that as soon as we could change the bank mandate, we should. I don't think any of your councillors who then didn't win their seat next May would even try and attempt to use that authorised signatory position. So that's that happens all the time in other councils. So, and I've never heard of anyone misusing their authorised signature status.
Right. All right, so we'll go with what we've got. We have a motion, we have a proposal, so we have a recommendation, we've got a proposal, we've got a second. All those in favour? Carry. Okay. Been a bit of a marathon session. Very much I need a drink.